Hi everyone, good morning, and welcome to today's K3 Hub session. Today we are covering AI for accountants and lawyers, and as you can imagine, it's been a very popular session for registrants today. So this is our seventh accredited CPD session for this year, and it is our last for before we take a short break over the summer. My name is Marie Wadeson, and I'm a managing director here at the K3 Advisory Group. I also lead the K3 Hub, which sits at the heart of our relationships with the professional advisory community. There should be a slide on the screen now which tells you a little bit more about the K3 Hub to save me from doing so, in which case I'm going to dive straight into today's session. So, moving on to some housekeeping. We are recording today's session, as you will have seen as you joined the webinar. This will be posted on the K3 Hub website either later today or on Monday, so you can look back. Q&A function is open. Do feel free to ask questions as we go along. If you will be kind enough to use the Q&A the Q&A functionality for your questions rather than the chat, that just helps our speakers today keep everything together. We are going to post a PDF of the slides into the chat shortly, and we'll do so periodically throughout the session for anybody that joins a little later. We are going to send out the slides also a little later on today after the session. There are a series of poll questions today in today's session. They are just for fun, but please do get involved and take part. We are aware that today is a long session. It's a Friday and it's also quite warm outside, so we are going to take a couple of breaks today. We'll expect those to be short breaks on the hour. So I'll move on to introduce you to today's speaker. So I'm really pleased to be able to welcome a new speaker to K3 Hub, Dr. Stephen Hill. Stephen is an expert trainer and consultant with over 25 years' experience, providing services to both private and public sectors. Amongst others, he has trained UK and European police forces, the National Crime Agency, and the Home Office. Prior to setting up his own consultancy, Stephen spent 11 years working for a top national firm of chartered accountants, heading up the fraud and forensic accounting group. Today, Stephen will be focusing on what AI is, how AI can be used both in the accounting and legal professions, the pros and cons of different AI tools, the art of prompting, and risks and regulations. Just before I go today, there is, as I've said, this is our final CPD session before the summer break. We do return on the 4th of September for a session on accounting issues with one of our regular speakers, Ralph Tiffin. Invitations are sent out on a regular basis. Please do keep your eye out on the inbox. We also promote the events on the K3 Hub website and also on the K3 Hub LinkedIn channel. So do feel free to give us a follow. I think all that's left for me to say is I hope you enjoyed today's session and wish you a great weekend when it arrives. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you much, Ray. Thank you. And a very warm welcome to everybody. And I'm absolutely delighted to be here. As I say, it's the first time I've spoken with this organisation, so I really am grateful for them inviting me. And I really do hope we have an enjoyable morning together looking at an ever-growing area, an ever-popular area in the field of artificial intelligence. So we're going to be going through looking at the area from both a legal and from an accounting perspective. I know there are others present here today coming from different backgrounds, but I think in terms of what we'll be covering, it would cover all angles, no matter what your profession. So as it is an AI course, there's going to be sort of interaction for me actually going through demonstrating as well as giving you the theory. But also I will also be putting in or using AI in relation to animations because it's an AI course and it's a fun thing to do in relation to that. So I think we're all good to go, but I just want to do one final check and we will see if we're good to go. I hope we are.
This session will commence in 10 seconds and counting. Systems checked, and the presentation is now ready. You are good to go. Welcome, everyone.
So AI has told me we're good to go, so we will launch in. And we're going to launch in straight away with a poll, because what I would like to find from yourselves is, are you currently using AI? So it just gives me a bit of a flavour of who's using what as we'll go through the session. But our first poll for the day is actually from those of you who are with us this morning, who's actually using AI? So that poll hopefully will be with you now. You've got to select not at all, occasionally, weekly, daily, or are you using it all the time for client work? So where do you fit in relation to your relationship with AI? So we'll have the poll up for a few seconds and then we'll share the results once we've got as many of you voting as possible. So if you are able to vote, please do. and it then gives us the opportunity to get a feel for how many of you currently are actually using AI. So we'll leave that poll open just for a few more moments, and then we will share those results. Okay, so we've ended our poll there. Thank you for those of you who responded. So we can see from the stats there, we've got a bit of a tie really between occasionally and daily. I did a very similar course this week, and we had the exact same results. And it was also the occasionally just tipped the daily. So there was quite a difference in relation to that. Actually, some of you might be using AI that you don't realize you're using AI. So if you've got, and this is where I have to put in a disclaimer, and I do apologize, if you've got an iPhone in the room, if you've got an Android device in the room, or if you've got an Alexa device, then when I say Alexa, if I say Siri, if I say, hey, Google, your device will have come to life straight away. I've got a couple of phones which have literally just flashed to life. Luckily, they're silenced, but we've been using AI for a considerable amount of time. But how we use it in our day-to-day roles, obviously, that's something that we're going to discover as we go through. Now, Marie very very well went through the housekeeping rules. So the only housekeeping rule I've got is one of the common questions that I get asked on these courses is as follows. So when we go through and we haven't got this as a poll, one of the areas that I have been asked on before is
I wonder if we'll learn about deep fakes. Just imagine if I can make a deep fake of Tom Cruise.
So I doubt Tom Cruise is going to make a presence today, but we will cover deep fakes, not obviously how to create them necessarily in detail, but I obviously want to cover that more as a risk aspect when it comes to the daily use of AI. So what are we going to cover? Well, over the next 3 hours, we're going to be looking at the environments in which AI works in terms of the chatbot ecosystems. We're going to look at automation in action, i.e. I'm going to be demonstrating particularly the 3 areas, which are the logos you see on the top of the screen, looking at how we could utilize ChatGPT, looking at how we could use Gemini, and how we could use Copilot. We're also going to be looking at those risks as well as those possibilities. A lot of this is going to be all the benefits, the possibilities, but we sometimes just have to bring it down just a peg or two to look at, well, what are the risks, what are the concerns when it comes to us basically utilizing this tool. And of course, the more you go through, which is why some of the documents that you'll have sent to you later, which are your prompting documents, and I've done prompts for accountants and prompts for lawyers, the better you are at prompt writing, the better the results are going to be when you utilize artificial intelligence. And for some of you that use it on a day-to-day basis, it's something you will have experienced already. So when it comes to AI, we can go and get definitions of what we mean by artificial intelligence. So we could go to good old Wikipedia, and we can see it's talking about the capability of computational systems to perform tasks. If we go to NASA, a great place to go, who's been using AI for decades, we can see it's referring to computer systems that perform complex tasks, normally done by human reasoning. But I thought, well, to get an answer about what is AI, why don't we ask AI? So this is something that I did last year. So I did a very similar sort of session last year at a conference over in Prague. And that was obviously back in 2025. And I did exactly the same. Now, the prompt that I gave in 2025 is the same prompt that I gave AI in 2026. And I just wanted to show you the difference in terms of how it responds to that particular question. Now, I did set the scene for the prompt. So I did say, I want you to be a fox. I didn't specify what type of fox, but I'd like you to be a fox in a futuristic world, explaining how AI will benefit. And I picked accountants. And this is the first response that we got from Google back in 2025. So it's listening to the actual, I didn't write the script. It's the script that it's written for itself. It's actually telling me, what it believes AI to be. And it's also just the way the animation is. Even though it's very good, hopefully you'll see a distinct difference between last year to the current year and the prompt that I did, which was only literally about a month or so ago. So let's have a look.
Artificial intelligence are computer systems designed to learn and think. We are shaping the future right before your eyes.
So that's a response. This is from Google. So this is me talking to Google and using VO3, which is a Google tool for creating video content. And I actually got AI to not only create the video, but to give its response. What do we mean? It failed to address accountants, and it's futuristic. We've got skyscrapers, looks a little bit like Abu Dhabi in the background there. And also we've got that sort of drone to depict it's a futuristic world. Well, this was the prompt that was recorded, like I say, just over a month ago, ready for this session. So let's have a look.
AI is fundamentally reshaping the landscape of accountancy, allowing us to process vast data sets with unprecedented speed and accuracy.
So it addresses straight away the area of accountancy. So we can see, and what this is, it's just demonstrating how things have progressed, literally just over a 12-month period. And then where are we going to be in 2027? So again, we're just seeing this technology, which isn't new, and we'll look at that in a moment, but we're seeing the advancements every year.
AI is
whoops, no, you've had your time, Mr. Fox. It's time to go. So what is artificial intelligence? Well, we've had our AI interpretation. We've had people who have contributed to the definition on Wikipedia. We've had space agencies such as NASA give their take. I think in terms of the way we see it, it's becoming now in our organizations, it's becoming the brain of the organization. And it's there to basically understand language, i.e. how we speak to it. So it's all going to be based around natural language. It's there to recognize patterns. So in things that we do on a day-to-day basis, it learns from us. So if we are in the role of, let's say, an accountant, it's recognizing patterns, the things we do. It basically gets into our mindset, and then it can start thinking for us the more we educate it. And likewise, if we're in the legal sector, it can do exactly the same. But when we look at recognizing patterns, we can also utilize that to, let's say, we're looking for fraud, and it could look for patterns or irregularities, anomalies, which just don't match the norms of society. And so it will start raising questions, creating red flags. It's learning from data. And so whenever you're using AI, obviously, if you're using the open databases, the open source databases, it's learning from anybody who's inputted information into that particular system, which is important why if we're using AI in our offices or even in our private lives, that it is worth paying for that subscription so that the information that you are providing AI, that you're talking to AI, is between that agent and you. It's not there for, the whole of society. It's there to solve problems. And we've seen this over a number of years, making recommendations and, of course, generating content. Now, as I said at the very beginning, because this is an AI session, there is a lot of content which has been generated based on me giving prompts, giving it the text, but then it's created the imagery. So the image you see on the screen here, I've provided all the text, and then I've given a prompt in how I want that image to be laid out. And then I've left it to AI to create that image for me, which would have taken me a lot longer in terms of finding the image, putting it in the right locations. But this is where we're seeing the advantage of utilizing AI. So where we're using it in everyday life, and the question of the poll we had a moment ago was, who's actually using AI? And we had, some of you weren't using it, but then we need to reflect on, okay, I've got Netflix, therefore I'm using AI. I use Google Maps, therefore I'm using AI. It may be that I'm an institution that uses it already, particularly the banks use it for fraud detection and have done so for at least the last 15 years. We have filters on our email clients, so they are utilizing AI. It's rule-based. It's saying what it should and shouldn't happen. And then, of course, we have those assistants, and apologies if it's in the background. We've got Siri and Alexa. So again, they're voice-activated chatbots that we can actually talk to. So AI is not new. And a lot of people, because of really since 2022, where we had the real introduction of ChatGPT, thought this was a new revolution. It's the introduction of AI. But people have been involved in AI. It's quite frustrating thinking, why is it just getting the attention now? It's been around for decades, but all of a sudden people are starting to talk about it. But what is new, I'd suggest, is the ability to understand and generate human language at scale. We're now in an environment where we're utilizing quantum computing. And it's taken us a while to get there, but with quantum computing, it's just like the speed, the power that we have today, we haven't had before, which is why we're seeing this revolution in terms of where we go to the movie theatre and we watch these films with very impressive CGI. It's due to that quantum computing input and element. But we can go right back to the Second World War, where we really were starting to use this machine learning, which we would talk about as AI. And Alan Turing is the only example I'll mention here. I'll pick on Alan Turing because if you're familiar with the Enigma code and Bletchley Park, just outside Milton Keynes, you'll be familiar with this individual. He was the person that sort of broke the code and obviously assisted, in a huge way in the Second World War. But there was also this thing called the Turing test. And the Turing test was basically you had an individual asking questions, and then you had two petitions. Behind one petition was a human being, behind the other petition was a machine. And you would basically beat the Turing test when the person asking the questions believed that the response from the machine was actually the response from the human being. And that then proved that actually the machine was providing answers that were mimicking, were the same as, or even better than how a human being would answer that particular question. Of course, we've got other individuals there as well. These individuals here, they are the pioneers. They're the people that really laid the foundation to where we are today. Those that get the biggest spotlight today, however, are the two gentlemen we see here, one from the US and one from the United Kingdom. We've got Sam Altman from the US, who is the creator, the brain behind OpenAI and ChatGPT and all the associated technologies. And then we've got Demis Hassabis, who is the brain at Google, who created DeepMind. So DeepMind, typically used for scientific discovery research, but a hybrid of that we have today. Formerly it was called Google Bard, now it's called Google Gemini, which a lot of you will be familiar with. So these are very recent introductions to the AI world. We've got 2010 DeepMind, and then 2015 came OpenAI. When we look at the media around artificial intelligence, it is all in many ways positive. It's actually saying, look, this is good for the UK economy, and we do need it. So UK AI, this was an article just under a year ago, last September, ballooning by 85% to 5,800 companies in the United Kingdom between 2023 and 2025. That means that what previous and current governments are trying to do is to really bolster the utilization of AI for particularly new companies so that we become a world leader, like we are in the gaming market. So any of you who you yourself, so you might have kids or friends with kids who play on a PlayStation, Nintendo, or an Xbox, we are one of the leaders when it comes to game creation for those platforms, from our universities to our tech companies. And I think the same is to be said for this area as well, where we do have a good eye for this particular field. But of course, there is that concern side, and we'll come back to that later. So we had a gathering of all the tech heads, two of which you can see on the screen there. So Zuckerberg and the head of the CEO of Google. And of course, Elon Musk was at that one as well, but he's turning his back to the camera there. But this was really to talk about, okay, we've got this technology. It's moving forward rapidly. We need to think about safeguards. And we had another sort of get together of these heads just before the Conservative government sort of came out of power. That was actually held at Bletchley Park. And that was to sort of look at how the UK was going to try and assist in this new revolution. When we look at dominance, I think this is always important because we have aspirations, we have ideas of what we believe the leaders are going to be. And certainly when it comes to technology, people straight away are thinking of Meta, the people behind Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. People are thinking behind Google, the largest search. But when it comes to the AI markets, ChatGPT is the big player, followed by Meta, which surprises a lot of people because it's ahead of Copilot and Gemini. And then you've got Claude sort of coming in there as well. So we can see the clear leader currently is ChatGPT. So this was created by utilizing AI. The content is mine. Obviously, I didn't draw the images, but the text is mine. And I've again used various techniques and various prompts through the likes of Gemini or Copilot and ChatGPT to create these images. And this one here was actually created using ChatGPT. But what it does for me is it just allows me to tell a story from where we have conversational AI chatbots right the way through to agentic AI, which we're seeing more and more today. So with our conversational AI, we've had this for a long time. It's where we could ask a question. So I could go, hey, Google, what's the weather going to be today? And Google will come back, which my phone is exactly doing now, just on the corner of my eye. And it's actually telling me what the weather is going to be. So that's a conversational AI, and we've had these for years. So you might be, I mean, I certainly, being a bit of a techno geek, I went out and got the first sort of Alexa device, which was the one that resembled a tub of Pringles, the big sort of black cylinder, which is actually sitting still in my office as part of my sort of memories or archive of that particular era of conversational AI. And of course, those bots have moved on quite significantly today. But that's where we can engage in a conversation. But those of you that have those, you actually know from your experience that sometimes it becomes a bit of an art to get the best response. I certainly remember when I got my first Alexa device, it was actually educating myself how to talk to this technology to get it to provide the answers. And my two daughters, who are obviously now older, but at the time I got my first Alexa, it was fascinating to see a child talking to technology, and the questions were sort of bizarre, weird things, that the device, obviously, it didn't know how to handle it. It was early days for Alexa, so it didn't know, how do I cope with that particular prompt? Like, Alexa, do you have a boyfriend? Says, sorry, I don't understand that. And that was a common thing in my household, was my daughter's just amazed there was this voice talking to them and asking all these particular questions. Today, it would engage in a conversation. It would even tell you about a possible boyfriend or girlfriend. We've then got our chatbots. Chatbots we've become very familiar with. If you're a Teams user, then you've got them in Teams. If you're using websites, you'll see them pop up on websites. You'll have them on your apps that you run on your mobile phones. And of course, if you use Messenger, it is a form of chatbot. We've got the area then, which we moved into, which is generative AI. So it can now understand what I'm saying, and it can write something for me or say something in natural language. So I could actually say, I want you to basically prepare this, this, and this. And it's coming back, rather than just telling me what the weather is going to be in London, which the conversational AI did, it's saying, well, here's a 3-day London itinerary with local tips, restaurant ideas, based on your preferences, etc. And then we've got the agentic AI. The agentic AI is now thinking for me. It's saying, okay, Stephen, you're due to take this particular journey because I've seen it in your calendar. What I'm going to do is I'm going to book your train tickets for you. I'm going to arrange the meetings for you and invite the individuals that you want to that particular meeting. And actually also what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some coffee sent over to that meeting. So I'm doing that all for you. Now, once upon a time, or still today, some of us might have a personal assistant that would be the individual that plays that very important role. Whereas now that's actually been taken over by agentic AI. So I've actually got this new virtual personal assistant. So if we start off, we kick off with conversational AI. This is basically your virtual assistants, your chatbots. They're systems that were developed to understand the questions in our own tone, no matter what language that we speak. It will interpret what we're saying and then hopefully provide the relevant information. And over the years, we've seen this getting better and better and better, and it will get ever better as we continue. And this is all using a technology which integrates with NLP, a term that you're hearing more and more about, which is natural language processing. Your search engines that you use on a day-to-day basis are now using natural language processing. So once upon a time, you had to put in quite a rigid query into Google or Microsoft Bing to get the information back from your search engine. Whereas now, because of the implementation of AI into these search engines, which has been going on for, again, a number of years, we can use natural language. We don't have to put in a very complicated query. We can just ask the question that we would a human being. So it allows the system to interpret that human language. They learn our voices, they learn our mannerisms, and then they give us the response. So if I went to the ICAW, this is the Institute of Chartered Accountants for England and Wales, their website, I'd be talking to Mia. But Mia states very clearly that it's not generative AI, so it won't be able to answer anything complicated. It's just simple questions on this section of the website, which is where I'm going there to talk about, I'm a student and I'm basically starting my journey to be a chartered accountant. So we have a very simplistic chatbot, which is still obviously in operation today. They haven't changed it. We had, as I mentioned a moment ago, we have those devices on our phones. We have the smart technology in our house. You can talk either through your remote control or directly to your television. We have a washing machine, which why we have it, I don't know, but we can talk to it. I know why we have it, it's to wash clothes, but why I need to talk to the washing machine, I don't know. But I can talk to it either through my app or I can go into our laundry room and I can actually talk to the washing machine. I can do similar things with our heating. So I can actually say to the heating, not through the app, but my voice commands, to actually turn the thermostat up or down. And in certain parts of the house, because it's an older building, got dehumidifiers, I can talk to them as well as I'm talking to you to get them to do various things. Can you now air purify? Set humidity to 50%. Not now typing in or looking at the app and pressing buttons, but actually talking to a dehumidifier. And some of you, we haven't yet. It's something I'm trying to convince Mrs. Hill to buy, is the new AI refrigerators, which I can also talk to, where I'll say, look, I've just used the last bit of cranberry juice, add it to my order, actually send that order now to whichever supermarket I wish to send that order to. So the technology, it's been around for some time. And if those of you are fortunate enough to travel, for example, to go to Japan, to go to Korea, you'll just see how much further advanced they are with this technology than we are here in the UK. And the Americans are amazed how far ahead we are in some aspects than they are in the US. It's an interesting sort of field. So this is something, like I say, that we're very comfortable and familiar with. So these are household names, which depends if you're an Android user or an iOS user. I've got an iPhone, whether you use Google Assist or Siri, but a lot of people will have those Alexa devices or other similar devices currently in their properties as part of this Internet of Things. So how could we apply them to real world situations? Like I've said, we can get them to make personalized recommendations. When you watch Netflix, you can vote whether you like the program or not. Netflix, like YouTube, will then say, okay, based on Stephen's preferences, he seems to be very much into sci-fi, or he seems to be lots into AI rom-coms. That's not me, that's my daughters that use my Netflix account. And so therefore, it's going to fine-tune to my preferences. We could utilize it in the working environment for customer automated services, so it can handle those routine inquiries. It may also be that we're going to assign it tasks. So can you actually send this to my diary? Can you remind me when to do this? Actually, can you send this message here? And by the way, at the same time, can you just change the thermostat? Because when I get home, I want it to be a nice warm temperature, etc., etc. IKEA utilizes their Billy the Bot. So again, it's utilizing one, which this time has a little bit more functionality to the one I showed you for the ICAW. You can actually speak in a little bit more detail to this one and ask more demanding questions because it's actually understanding and it's got a database based on all the natural language processing from previous queries to give you the best response. So your modern chatbots, today, they're actually plugged into generative AI engines, which mean they can generate content. And we can get them to do so much more than just the simplistic chatbots of, let's say, 10 years ago. The prompt is the key thing, though. The prompt, whether you're typing it in or whether you're speaking, the prompt is essential because how you apply your prompt is the responses that you're going to get back. So you will be receiving materials after this session today, which, as I said earlier, will give you examples of prompts that will get the best out of these particular bots. But also, we're going to use this during the session as well. We're going to do some live examples where we actually get to understand more about what constitutes what I call a lazy prompt, where we're not really thinking too much, where we can give it a very detailed prompt. And the information you'll see, it's staggering, the difference in terms of how they'll respond and the quality that you'll be getting back. So chatbot platforms, if any of you are interested, if you haven't already got chatbots on your websites, as an example, we've got sort of 3 of the big players here. I'm not here to sell these items or these services. They're just ones which get recommended, particularly in the accounting and legal media. So Intercom, Drift, and Zendesk. So they basically, in the words of one of the articles I read, it says that they've transformed customer engagement, enabling businesses to provide instant response. This is 24/7 responsing. So whilst you go home and you want to be with your family, you actually want to sleep at night, you might want to go on holiday, you might want to eat, etc., etc. They don't. They are there in the background 24/7 doing everything whilst you're there doing other things. And even during the working day, they're taking the grind out of some of the mundane areas, and then you can be looking at the more strategic areas to develop your business and work with your clients. So Drift, just as an example, I've just captured that data from their website. What I would recommend actually is going to this particular website, not to say that you're going to use the tool. They have some fantastic templates and some very good free resources. That's why I've chosen this one out of those 3. So you've got the website address in the PDF document that you've been sent. And when you click on that, they're all hyperlinked. It will take you straight through to that website. Go to the resources section. There's some fantastic free resources, which you can then download and use. So when we're moving from the conversation to the generative AI, in terms of, well, how could I use this in my business? If I'm looking at using this and I want to apply this tomorrow, how could I use it? And that's something that I would just want to find out from you guys now. This is going to be our second poll, is before we jump straight into how could you use it, do you have any concerns when it comes to using AI? So I just want to launch the poll, which you can see on the screen now, and just ask you, I'm talking about the positives at the moment, but what concerns you? If you're one of those people that's still hesitant, you haven't used it, what is your concern? Is it the accuracy? Is it data security? Is it regulation? Or is it job impact? I.e., this is doing what I do on a day-to-day basis. Therefore, where am I? What do I do? So we'll have that poll open for a few more seconds, and then we'll close the poll and share the results. But it's always good for me just to, again, to get an idea of what sort of does concern you. It's also for me to compare it with other groups from different backgrounds, from different sectors, see if we are sharing the same themes, which you did on the previous poll. Okay, so that poll has closed, and again, it's no surprise to me that number one, which is always the case, is going to be accuracy and data security, and that's because we've got a legal element on this session, which I would assume is one of the areas there. But certainly data security. Interestingly, that's the lowest stat I've seen for job impact in terms of it's going to impact my role. Probably because some of the organisations I've spoken to, or the membership organisations I've spoken with, it's people who are doing sort of those areas which probably would relate more to where AI could not replace, but it could certainly do a big part of their job. So thank you for that poll. So that's good to know. So accuracy is a concern. And that would relate to this. So in terms of this business example, we would have those concerns or hesitations over accuracy if we're producing board reports, we're sending client emails, we're producing policy documents, we're looking at financial analysis and summarising. Now, of course, AI can do all that, and we'll see that demonstrated as we go through this session. But there's always going to be that niggle that I've actually got AI to do something and then send it straight to a client. And I'm hoping you're thinking, no, I wouldn't do that, because I certainly wouldn't. And as you'll see, it's a theme as I go throughout today's session, that AI, to me, it's my apprentice. It's my junior apprentice. It will go away when I've given it a task to do. But like any apprentice in the real world, I will then look at its work and I will then monitor, review, amend before ever I let it get loose to a client. So that it's like in your traditional partnerships, you'd have your junior lawyer, your junior accountant doing the work they're based to do. Then they might have a manager oversee it, and then a partner would oversee it before it actually then gets liaised to the client. It might even go through a compliance department, or it might go through proofreaders, etc., before anything is released. And of course, traditionally, that's what takes time. And that's where AI has been seen as it cuts out that time. But there's always has to be those safeguards to ensure that you're not 100% trusting what you have through AI. So thank you for that result. With generative AI and the platforms we're going to look at, in the world of finance and accountancy, first of all, we can see ChatGPT being one of the big players when it comes to complex problem solving. It can basically provide deeper financial analysis. It could assist us with workflows, automation. With Gemini, if we're using the Gemini or the G Suite, that's going to be Google Sheets, for example, and the Google tools equivalent to your Microsoft Office, then we could utilize it directly with those. It could actually help us to do, again, faster research. It could help us to keep up to date with market trends, etc., because it's Google. And of course, Google Search being the sort of the pioneer there. If we're looking at Copilot, of course, we'd integrate it with Microsoft Office, that 365. So there's a no-brainer. We'd use it whilst we're in Excel, if we're in Word, if we're in meetings such as Teams, if we're using Outlook. Now, we're not going to go in detail to Claude, but Claude in its own right is a very, very powerful generative AI tool to use, exceptional when it comes to long document review, and in particular when it comes to large context windows. And what we mean by that is it has a massive working memory. So I'm not just going to give it a 200-page report to review. I'm going to give it 10, 12, 20 other documents or spreadsheets for it to look at all at the same time. And that's where it has its real strength. Now, there is an element of Claude in Copilot, but it is only if your IT department is something that you have to add. It's an agent, so you won't have it by default. But there is, those of you that use Copilot and you're using a paid-for version of Copilot, you'll have actually seen, particularly in Excel, you can actually add Claude agents. That's something that needs to be added. In the world of in terms of the legal profession, ChatGPT, document review, summarising, Copilot, interactive legal drafting, Gemini, regulatory compliance monitor, and Claude, autonomous contract negotiation. So these are all areas that have been highlighted as the key strengths in this particular two sectors. So our large language models, don't want to spend too much time on this. Again, you may have heard the term, certainly people talking about AI now, talking about these LLMs. Just think of it, if you bring this technology into your own environment, think of it as the brain. It's the brain of the organization. So you'll have a system like a lot of the big four have done now. So I've got quite a few links with KPMG, and having spoken to KPMG, and they have their own sort of alternatives to the likes of ChatGPT, they have their own large language models. And that basically means that anyone in the organization They can ask questions, they can summarize, they can draft documents. What's our policy on this? How do we do that? Find information about this client. It's there. It's a knowledgeable digital assistant. Rather than having someone that traditionally would have that role who would know where to go and what to do, you've now got it so everyone can access it electronically. Agentic AI. So this was the fourth section on that little diagram I had earlier. This is going beyond chatbots. It's the AI that acts, and it's really come on from 2000 to where we are in 2026 going forward. So it will set its own sub goals. It will actually use tools and data sources independently. It doesn't need to be told. It'll operate across long tasks, unsupervised. You don't need to keep, telling it what to do with another prompt. It's actually doing it because that's the way this works. And it will adapt dynamically as new information arrives. It could be that we're doing something, let's say it's tax-based work, and agentic AI is saying, this is great, but HMRC have just made some changes. There's just been a new directive. Or it could well be, hang on, there's just been some changes to data protection. So therefore, we now need to take account of this. We might not be aware of those changes, but it is because it's basically feeding into those areas. So it's keeping its finger on the pulse. And this is where we're seeing the move as we go through. I've got a couple of examples where this could be used. This is a tax compliance one. Obviously, as I was saying about HMRC a moment ago, it could pull client data. It connects the accounting software that we use. It pulls the client data. It retrieves all those records. It can check HMRC rules, so it can cross-reference against any current HMRC guidance. It can then identify if there are any actionable deductions. It can then flag any risks, so highlight anomalies. It can find and source or request missing information that will require professional judgment. It prepares a complete draft ready for the accountant to review, for sign off, and then the accountant signs off. And then obviously you've got that human intervention. So what we're saying here is what could in theory take 2 to 3 days can now basically be completed within the hour. So that's one such example. Another example could be client advisory. So again, we could have a growing SME client approaching the VAT threshold. The accountant's busy with month end. Without an agent, the risk goes unnoticed until it's too late. But what the agent can do is it can monitor the revenue in real time. It can detect threshold approaches automatically. It can model financial scenarios, so register versus delay, and then it can alert the accountant when a ready-made brief is there. It's being proactive, it's faster, it's adding value. And in theory, does that mean we're retaining our clients because we are providing a service which is superfluous to what it was, let's say, a year ago? So again, we're elevating the accountant from a number cruncher, as I said at the bottom, to a trusted advisor. And that would be the same in any context. This is just accountancy-based examples. So coming back to my story, and and this is more for you to take away, I put together the infographic here saying that, you need to plan a team offsite event for 20 people in London next month. Our chatbot is going to say, okay, this is, the basics that I can give you here. Our generative AI is going, okay, here's a 2-day offsite plan of what you can do. Our agentic AI is going, right, I've booked the venue, I've reserved the room, I've ordered the catering, I've scheduled a Teams meeting, you've got a riverboat trip on day 2, I've set up the transportation, the total cost is this, it's within budget, and I've shared the itinerary and calendar invites with everybody concerned. Done. So that's the difference between the generations that I spoke about at the beginning. So that's just a reminder of the strengths and the progress we've had across those. So that's more for a prompt for you going forward. So the bottom line really is that with agentic AI and where we're going forward now, less time on data processing, we're becoming, more an advisor rather than a preparer because we've got something else doing the preparation for us. And of course, we're always looking for that competitive advantage. It's not a unique selling point because everyone is using AI today in some shape or form. But a quote that I saw, and I can't remember the exact source, but it's under competitive advantage, where I've actually copied an exact quote, which firms that adopt early will lead the market. And it went on to say those that don't will basically, become extinct. And I think that is becoming a reality. Sometimes you think, oh, that's a bit scaremongery, and I think people are getting a bit carried away. But AI has been with us for so long now, it's something that's not going to go away. It's like me turning around and saying, we're not going to use social media anymore because let's just face it, it's caused more problems than it's not, you can't switch it off. It's too embedded in what we do. And to switch it off, although governments are trying, it would just be one of those impossible missions. And it's exactly the same with the utilization of AI. Alternative platforms, of course, have named names there. But these are just some others which you might want to have a look at. So I've already mentioned Claude, but you've got Perplexity, you've got DeepSeek, you've got Notebook, which is an engine driven by Google, and then of course you've got Grok. So there are others in addition to these, but these again are big names that you may be familiar with. Before we start using the three tools that I want to go through, I just wanted to talk about some other areas which we can utilize, such as text-to-speech technology. So this is an example. There are many other tools out there, but Murf AI is just a nice and easy one to use. This is why I've just chosen it. So this basically is how we can get content access. It's how we can basically, get someone to speak to our clients, but not us, but we can actually get a bot to speak to our clients. So it's basically, traditionally it's for voiceovers on videos, so you can do a voiceover, but now you can actually utilize this technology to be your virtual receptionist. So it has the brain now, so it knows all the sorts of things to do. So it can send you to the right individuals, send you to the right person, or sometimes it can even answer queries for you. So I thought I'd just give you a very quick demo here. And with this one here, I'm just going to link to my web browser and we'll see one of its agents, hopefully ready to go. And we will be able to then ask it a question. So I'm just going to double check that you are seeing what I want you to see. So you should be seeing that now. So we're now on the website. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to call its virtual assistant. This is purely a demo for me to make a reservation, just so you can see how easy it is, how good the voice interaction is, and the way the actual bot responds to me. So this is just a very, very simple demo. So let's call Benedict. So I'm just going to give it permission to access my microphone. And I'm just going to allow it to actually access my section.
Welcome. Are you interested in making a reservation with us at FarmFest? Let me know how I can assist.
Yeah, good morning, Benedict. I'd like to make a reservation. I just want to check first of all, do you cater for vegans?
Morning. Yes, we absolutely cater to vegans. Our menu is crafted with fresh, seasonal ingredients, and we always have vegan options available. What date would you like to join us?
Yeah, I'm not sure on the exact date yet, but I'm looking probably at the 21st of August, probably around about 7:30 in the evening.
Wonderful. August 21st at 7:30 in the evening sounds great. How many guests will be in your party?
There's going to be about 12, but Benedict, I must go because I'm on a bit of a rush. I'm running a course. Thank you.
No problem at all. I'll pencil in the details for a party of 12 on August 21st at 7:30 p.m. Feel free to call back anytime to finalize the reservation.
I'll cut him off there, but you get an idea of how this works. So basically, it's all around this natural language. It's the same as if I'm speaking to my sort of smart speakers, etc. But it's very, and I love testing these and asking, much more complicated questions just to see how it handles the way that I would actually respond. So that's something that, again, we could apply within our own organization very effectively. We could also get it to make phone calls where we give an actual script. So the system could, for example, detect that someone is overdue on their payment. So I could put together a very simple script, which we'd use for all telephone calls going forward. But what it would do is it would actually put in where the blanks are. So it puts in the invoice number, it put in the amount owed, and of course, how many days it's actually overdue. So again, that's something that we could put together using its sort of search. This is the same website here. So I've gone to its sort of content creation here, and I can then basically put in my prompt, as you saw on the previous screen. I can choose the language that I want, and of course, I can then get that recorded, and that can then be automated to contact that particular client. So this is just a very short video of me doing a screen capture or a video capture, just to give you an idea of how it catered for this. I've gone for an American voice this time.
Hello, this is a friendly reminder from Ledger & Co. Your invoice number 1042 for £1,250 is now 7 days overdue. If you've already made payment, thank you. Otherwise, you can pay online or contact us with any questions.
So of course, that's one that's been recorded. I can then switch to France, and of course it's translated, and I can send a message this time in French. So you can choose your bot, the voice, and then away it goes. So this would now be going to any clients which would speak French. So this is just loading that up, and then
Bonjour.
it's good to go.
Ceci est un rappel amical de la part de Ledger et CO. Votre facture N-1042.
So I'll leave that one
Hello.
there rather than going through that again, but you get the idea of how these work. So why are we in the UK, or most of us, adopting AI? Now, I went to do some research on this, and I've gone to, as you can see at the bottom, Google, Microsoft, Deloitte, and Reuters. And that allowed me to amalgamate all their data, again, using AI. So giving AI all the different data sources that I have, saying, I need you to come up with an average and take the key points. So the first one was that 40% from all the surveys that have been done, all the research that's been done through these organizations, it's to save time on admin. So it frees up time on nearly half their administrative hours, redirecting efforts towards high value advisory client services. That was a major theme, and that was estimated to be 40%. 85% across, again, all the research done by these organizations, it's faster client response time. So the average response time was dropping dramatically within a 24-hour 7, but now it's automated. It meant that we could respond that much quicker. Annual savings, this was for the UK again, typically around 25,000. But you could argue again, you could say, oh, okay, that's an average, but I've heard higher, I've heard much lower. Of course, any of these could be questioned, but this is coming from the sources, which I'd like to think are reputable sources at the bottom there. And then 92%, which was the one that interested me the most, the 92% increase in staff satisfaction, where you thought it would be negative because there's that threat of it's going to take over my job. But this was from accountants, that they actually had higher job satisfaction now because it freed up the mundane tasks of doing the number crunching, doing reconciliations, actually going through, doing the mundane areas within payroll, for example, where it could now be taken over and they could do something which really challenged them more on what they wanted to do, rather than just being there and going through scrupulous amounts of spreadsheets, etc. So there were some interesting stats. We've also seen this backed up in the media as well. So small businesses could save a day if they use AI, according to Google. In Forbes, we saw the UK economy could gain another 553 billion by 2030 by utilizing AI, again from Google. Probably, a bit of a bias there, as the AI is on some of them, the Google tools and products. So let's start with you to get you thinking. And this is something that I really want you to think about going forward. What sort of things would be a mundane task? So for those of you in the world of accountancy, is it expense reconciliation? Is it going to be in the legal world, contract reviews? Could it be checking your payroll? Could it be due diligence checks, again, if you're legal or in the accountancy world? Or is it just that basic mundane data entry? These are all the typical repetitive tasks. So I want you to hold that thought and think, well, now we've heard and seen some examples, how really could this technology help us going forward? So if you haven't yet implemented a very simple sort of roadmap, first of all is to assess the needs of your firm. Where does AI have a role? Where do we believe it could have a role? And hopefully I'll try and focus on some of that as we go through today. And you might then see this would be a need for us. I've just seen that, and that is something that we do, and we could utilize AI. Evaluate the platforms. You've got multiple different platforms out there. It's like anything in life. You're going to evaluate different products. You're not just going to go out and think, oh, I like Google, so I'm going to use Gemini. Well, have you considered ChatGPT? Have you considered Copilot, particularly as you use Office 365? Why would you ignore Copilot? So evaluate the different platforms that are available to you. Then always launch a pilot program, and that would be over a month period. And it would be a small pilot just to ascertain the pros and cons of the AI tools that you're choosing. Train your team, which is the most important part. One, to get them to buy into it. So obviously to reassure this is not your job being taken over. This is here to make you better in what you do so that you can get promoted to other areas that you really want to do. And we can get this now to your boring, mundane sort of task, no matter what level you are within the organization, whether you're on the shop floor, right the way through to if you're the CEO. And then, of course, we've got that monitor and optimize. It's organic. You're always going to be continuously tinkering, making changes and adapting it so it best fits your organization. Where will it fit in 3 years? So really what I'd like to know is in terms of 3 years time. So our next poll is going to be looking at poll number 4. So for poll number 4, I'm just allowing my colleagues to know which poll to run. If you could automate just one task tomorrow, which would you choose? So over the next few years, which one would you actually choose if you could utilize AI? So drafting routine legal documents, reviewing contracts for key risks, email, client communications, researching legal guidance, or financial regulations. So in relation to that, what sort of area, where would you like to be? Could you see AI helping you in 3 years? So again, it doesn't really matter what sector you're in there. It's the case, we all have legal guidance in our organizations. We have financial regulations we have to follow. We all have to engage in emails and communications with our clients. We have to review contracts. We have to draft routine legal documents as well. So or we get assistance with that, sorry, from our legal firm. So which area would you vote for there? So we'll have it open for a few more seconds and then we'll close that poll. Okay, so some healthy results coming there. So thank you to everyone from voting. We can see that the two big ones, email and client communication, and researching legal guidance and financial regulation. Again, not telling me anything, that no surprises there. So they are the two big areas. But some of you, in terms of drafting legal documents, those of you in the legal background, and the other reviewing contracts for key risks. So getting just another set of eyes to highlight areas that, of course, you can then review. So thank you for that poll. So that's very, very helpful going forward. So when we look at AI, I want to look at it from two sector angles. The first one is in the finance sector, and then we're going to look at it in the legal sector. So first of all, if we start off with AI in the sort of the accountancy sector, but we all have a finance department. So of course, this would reflect any organization. But from all the data that's out there, again, I've done my research. I've got AI to do my research. So the different bots, so from using Gemini to Copilot to using ChatGPT, I've been given what I've asked them, what is the top 10 use? They've given me 10 reasons, each of them, and then I've amalgamated those which are the same areas across those different responses. And these aren't in any particular order, but these were the same things coming back when I was asking that question. What are the top uses today in finance for AI? From variance analysis to credit control, right the way down to fraud detection. So these are the areas which, if you haven't thought about already, these are the areas where AI is currently being utilized in the world of finance and the world of accountancy. There are solutions out there that will do a lot of that for us already. And some of you might be using products such as Sage, you might be using Xero, you might be using Trulian, Equifast, etc. There are many different third-party tools that will have AI built into them, tools that we've been using for a long time. So it might be that you are a Sage house, it might be you're using other products which are out there, of course, and then they now have their AI element or their AI bot that you can integrate into what you would do on a day-to-day basis. So for those that are on the screen there, I've just given a bit of an explanation for you after this session. If you're thinking, oh, what does that do? It just basically gives you a bit more intel in terms of how that particular solution may apply to your organization in terms of what does it do. So that's for you to sort of digest after our session today. Emerging trends in the world of accountancy, what we're seeing now and in the future, we are seeing, and this source is the Big Four. This is what the Big Four are talking about. And of course, they have models that will do a lot of this for you as well. Predictive financial monitoring. So algorithms which are forecasting cash flow, identifying risks, and then modeling scenarios with unprecedented accuracy. This is the wording from our Big Four firms. AI-driven fraud detection. It's certainly an area in my counter fraud work, which is another area I'm involved in, that we are using quite extensively now. So machine learning to spot anomalies or suspicious patterns. Usually when I would have a forensic accountant, forensic accountants, they need to have breaks, they need to go home in the evening, they get tired, and sometimes going through stuff can be pretty intensive. Whereas you've got AI, which doesn't need a break, it doesn't get tired, and it's just there looking, and looking obviously at a much faster rate than a set of human eyes. But I would never just rely on AI. Again, I would have that sort of intervention and that oversight with that human element. And then automated audit sampling as an example. So intelligent systems, secting samples, testing controls. So your auditors of today, what's being predicted by the Big Four is, and of course it's going to affect them, you're not going to have an auditor coming on site anymore. You're going to have it all automated through AI. It will take the samples, so it doesn't ask you, I need to have this, this, and this. It will basically select the samples itself. It will have its test controls. It will flag exceptions. It will transform overall efficiency of audit. and its effectiveness. This again is coming from our big four accountancy firms. That's the way they see it going forward. So our accountant of the future is going to be seen moving away from doing some of the more mundane tasks to be the strategic advisor, to be utilizing in technology more and more. So we're looking at more fluency with our technology in the environment. And of course, that allows more time for our clients so we can be more client focused. And that's seen as one of the major benefits to the world of accountancy. And the same would apply to any sector. It's not just because I've got the word accountant on the slide. This could be to any sector when it comes to AI. So from the transformation perspective, keeping again with the theme of accountancy, and the quote that I've got here is from automating tedious administrative tasks to enhancing client relationships and improving decision making. These intelligent tools are becoming indispensable patterns in the modern accounting practices. So that's again another quote looking at really building up how we're seeing AI going forward. One of the other areas, which has always been an area which this sort of technology has been seen as a bit of a blessing, is streamlining those typical administrative tasks even. So the challenges, countless hours doing repetitive admin work, chasing documents, scheduling meetings, manually putting in data for our data entry. Tasks, whilst necessary, draining valuable time. Chatbots offer that transformative solution, so they can handle these routine operations autonomously, and they can do them quicker, focusing our time on other areas, like I said, looking at strategic development, etc. So intelligent scheduling, it could be that now the new technology, the AI that we're bringing in, can automatically coordinate client meetings for us. It can send out those reminders. It can basically say that we've got critical deadlines, therefore we need this information from you because we're doing your tax returns, VAT submissions, etc. Or it could be that automated data entry. So we could provide all the information saying, look, it's on the system, there it is. It will then use from the PDFs, from the spreadsheets, from the Word documents, it will use optical character recognition, and this isn't nothing new. And then basically it can take it all and automate it. So then it gets uploaded, let's say, into QuickBooks, into Xero, into Sage, whichever product that we're using. That communication revolution, we've got that possibility now that whilst we are doing other things, because we are human beings, we need to sleep, we'd like to have a holiday, etc., we can get the AI to basically be there 24/7 for us. So those virtual assistants, which is what I started to look at the beginning, they are there now to handle those common questions and queries. And we're becoming very familiar with this now. I actually, because sometimes it gets really frustrating when I'm trying to call a call center, because sometimes there might be a barrier to language because call centers aren't necessarily here in the UK. There might be, it's a really poor telephone line, etc. I would much prefer to have a virtual assistant, and usually they're able to give me the answer straight away. Or if it gets too complicated, they will then connect me to a human, who we believe to be a human, who is then basically asking me more complicated or more sort of complex questions, and me giving the sort of the complex response that AI perhaps at the moment wouldn't be able to handle. But that's only a matter of time. So instant responses is one area that we've already discussed. Real-time status updates, so your clients can check the progress of their tax return, they can check the progress of their audit, they can check the progress on financial reports that you're creating for them, automating updates, making it a lot easier rather than getting the phone call, right, where are we with this, where are we with that, because they've already been told. It's an automated call, they've been told. Brain or Brian, our bot, has spoken to the client. And seamless client onboarding. So rather than us going through all these are the forms you need to fill out, we've got to do our due diligence checks. That's quite a lengthy process. Whether it's client or staff onboarding, we can now get AI to do that. But of course, with us overseeing the process and then verifying it at the end, sort of giving it that seal of approval. Again, there are tools out there that will do this for us. I've included this one because, again, if you go to resources, they've got some fantastic third-party tools for you to use. So I'm actually mentioning these more for their freebies. So there's actually some really good tools if you go to the Vina website. I'm not going to go to it now, but I just wanted to mention it does a lot of what I've just described so far. That's why I've introduced it to you. But also it's more to do with the free tools that it offers. And of course, it's one of many. There are literally hundreds of these products out there as we speak. Compliance advisory, well, we can make this a lot simpler. So basically, it may be that if we're thinking still about tax legislation, Regulations are changing frequently. The bots are basically able to keep up to date with this, and they can then liaise with us as the people that are providing the service, that they can liaise with our clients as well. They can ensure that nothing is overlooked whilst giving you, the opportunity to be that advisor, but we're getting our content from AI. But of course, we can go through and do our checks before we then start giving that advice to clients. But a lot of the back has been broken from doing all the actual initial research. So regulatory change alerts, it could be that that goes out to our clients, or even we get these alerts when something has changed. So for example, the new Making Tax Digital, which is very much, a burden of my life at the moment with my companies being reminded, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. You can no longer send a spreadsheet. You've got to use a product that does X, Y, and Z. So that's HMRC trying to be helpful, but actually being unhelpful in many ways. And then you've got rapid tax estimation, so calculating queries from tax obligations, corporation tax liabilities, dividend tax implications. We know with a change of Prime Minister, there's talk of there being even further taxation changes, which is going to affect some of us, if not all of us. This is keeping its finger on that pulse and making those changes or advising accordingly. So really, we're embracing the future of accounting. We're not saying there's no more a role for the accountant. It's basically giving the individual that competitive advantage. It's meaning that we're taking away the mundane tasks, but we're now allowing that improved accuracy and compliance, increased efficiency, which is saving us time, obviously, and data-driven insights and decision support. Now, on that note, I see my clock, it's 1 minute past 10, so we just want 1 minute over that. We are now going to stop for a 10-minute break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to continue on. So enjoy your break. If there are any questions, then please put them into the Q&A box, and I can address those at the beginning of the next section. If not, enjoy your break, and I'll see you back here in 10 minutes. Thank you. Okay, we're going to sort of start again in just a moment. Just in terms of Q&As, I've actually answered very good questions. I've answered one of the questions, so that's been submitted to the Q&A, and I noticed another one's come through into chat. Again, a very, very good question, and very much a focus of what we're going to look at later on today. But just to sort of pick up on that point now, anything that you were to provide to these third-party agents, I would always be very, very cautious with. It depends on the level of sensitivity and the security of that particular data. So yes, it would be a case of really stressing to anyone using these tools that you would have your AI policies and procedures, and you would follow those guidelines of what you can and can't do. Now, with the ones that you pay for, there is that sort of trust between you, the client, and obviously the service they provide, and that information doesn't go to anywhere else. But I don't think the ICO would see that if they had a data breach and you've been uploading information which wasn't encrypted and they've had the issue and that data is now being exposed. Even though it's at their end, it's still your data, therefore your responsibility. So I'm always very cautious with those. So when we're sort of setting up, when we're talking about the sort of the brain of the organization and staff can go to it to talk to various things, again, it's going to have to be built in with safeguards. Like with anything, there's going to have to be restrictions. It would even have to have partner sign off to ensure that before you even go there, that you've got these safeguards as you would have traditionally. But a very good point there. With Mirth, it's not really going to be, that's just your virtual assistant where you can give it basic scripts, which I wouldn't have thought would apply, would be sort of an issue as such. But certainly when we're going to look at some of the big players out there, so we're talking the Gemini's, Copilots and ChatGPT, they're the areas where we would have to treat them with caution in terms of, well, how much are we prepared to give these tools? We know, and unfortunately it has been the legal sector that's been picked up in the media, that there have been instances, and these have been reported, and there've been, enforcement actions being taken against them from the ICO, that documents, client documents, have been basically uploaded from the clients. A junior lawyer or a trainee lawyer, solicitor, has taken the files, uploaded them to the tools that they're using, not realizing that they should have redacted the information. So that's something, again, that we really need to give some thought to. So there's just another question to come out. I'm going to carry on, but that sort of ties in to what we're going to carry on later. So Catherine, I will come back to you on that question. Again, I'm just reading with one eye, talking with the other. A really good question, but if I can come back to that. would be great. Any other questions, keep them coming through, because it's really important whilst we're here all together that there are if there are any questions, I'm here to answer them. If there are things that I feel, do you know what, that's just above and beyond. I am not of legal background. I don't have a legal background. Obviously, some of you would do. If there are areas which I feel I don't really think I can help, there may be some of you watching this thinking, well, from a legal perspective, this is what we could do. But there are certainly teams that I work with that would be able to assist. So you've got the ways to communicate and contact me. As Marie said at the beginning, if there's any questions post this event, then of course they can be sent on to me and I'll be happy to get them answered for you. But coming back to what we were saying just prior to the break, again, it's me stressing this point because sometimes these sessions are seen as that's it. It's just all about taking over our jobs and we're doomed, so to speak. It's your junior analyst, which really comes back to one of the questions raised in terms of do we trust these? It's your junior analyst. It's not a replacement. And remember that with your own junior members of staff, you would not let them loose on a client straight away. You would not let them answer to give legal advice, to give financial advice without it going through the proper channels. And it's exactly the same here. It's just another team member who works for you, who is giving you advice, giving it advice quicker, but mistakes do get made. And I'll demonstrate that as we go through this session. So let's think about that going forward. In terms of using AI as your knowledge assistant, just a very quick case study. Now, I'm not going to name the firm behind this, but this is just a case of a UK company. It's a UK accounting practice. So this is a mid-sized firm spending significant time responding to routine client queries regarding VAT, payroll, filing deadlines, and bookkeeping processes. So this is the process they put in place. They used an AI knowledge assistant. And in this particular context, it was the use of Copilot. So it was there to help them to standardize their internal policies. So basically, it was going from your static PDFs to conversation intelligence. So if anyone's saying, what is our policy on AI? Then, go to the internet, try to find it. It's a static PDF. What you've got now is you've got that access to the brain of the firm. You can actually talk to it. Say, so what do we do about this? But how does it relate to this? And you would hope that it's coming back with the information rather than you just trying to read through a 6-page policy yourself. You've got the link to, or they had the link to HMRC guidance. So the assistant could process thousands of pages of HMRC manuals to provide concise citations when it came to a complex tax case or tax treatment. Firm procedures, so tax preparation, step-by-step guidance in terms of complex personal or corporate tax computations. So it's just taking you through. So it's almost like you've got someone that normally you'd have someone over your shoulder in the physical form. You've now got AI taking you through, right, if this is the first time you've done this, or this is a complex one which we haven't seen before, this is what, the suggested steps would be. And of course, liaising with your clients. So that client liaison from those FAQs to more complicated questions that they may well pose. So that gives you that as an example. What did they glean from that? Well, they gleaned they had fast response times. It reduced the routine inquiries that were particularly going to staff because it was coming straight through and it could be responded to via the brain, and then obviously relevant people getting involved. Increased client satisfaction because it's a faster turnover, and more advisor time for that higher value work, which increases your client satisfaction as well because they feel they have more of your time, where you can basically give them more time in certain areas where beforehand that time wasn't available. Short on staff cost money, changes in all the things we've seen recently, particularly around taxation and those areas. So I know organisations have struggled, particularly with junior members of staff, but now you've got someone or something that can assist in that area. It's all down to your prompt. The prompt is the key thing. So I'm just going to do a very quick example and we'll keep it very, very simple. We've got data here that we can see, which is looking at Q1, Q2 under different categories. This is the expenditure on travel, office supplies, software, training, etc. So what we want to do is we just want to notice and ask, and in this case, we're going to actually go to our bot, which will be Copilot. We're going to upload the data. We're going to basically get it to analyze it for any overspending, any unusual patterns, and then we can make those strategic insights. Or we can actually ask Copilot, what would you think? What would you recommend? So I'm going to switch very quickly to Copilot, and I'm going to put in the data. So I'm just double checking that you're seeing everything I'm seeing again. Paranoid, but I'm just checking my other screens. Yep, you are. Good. So I've just put in the raw data. It's very, very simple. You know, it's just a very short list. But obviously this could be, you know, thousands of rows in 2 or 3 sheets on a spreadsheet, but I've just kept it very, very simple. And then we need to put in the question. So we put in the data. If I was in a spreadsheet, of course, I could use Copilot directly within Excel. If I had it as a separate spreadsheet or a PDF or Google Sheets, I'd click on the plus sign, which would allow me to add the files or the content where based on its location. So I am now going to, and it's just, here's one I prepared earlier. So I'm just going to very quickly go to my other document, which it won't affect what you're seeing. And I'm just going to copy. It saves me having to type it out because I'm male. I can't multitask. I can't type and talk at the same time. Either I talk gibberish, my typing's good, or I'm talking quality and the typing is appalling. So let's do a cut and paste job. So it's a very simple query. Summarize Q1 versus Q2 expenses. So Copilot's got my raw data, and now it's going through looking at that. Even though it's simplistic, it's still coming back with, you know, quite a detailed report. So total spend in Q1 and to Q2, so there's been a jump in 15,000. That's a 53% increase. That's quarter to quarter. We can see again the difference in spend on travel, office supplies, etc. What this means for your expense profile. So basically it's saying, look, 3 categories: training, travel, client meals. Together, these account for 14,600 of your 15,000 total, with of the 15,100 total increase. So this pattern typically indicates expanded business activity, more client-facing work, or investment in staff development. So it's sort of suggesting. So I could then say to it, okay, what would you recommend, or is there anything I can do to maximize Q3 or to maximize sort of, you know, savings? So what can I do to in Q3? So I've given it my raw data, and I'm actually asking it now, you know, to maximize, what would you recommend? So it's now giving my priorities, and it's basically saying priority 1, you know, this is your biggest lever. It's saying introduced pre-approval for trips, shift to virtual meetings by default. So why are you spending on face-to-face meetings? Good point. Advanced booking policy, preferred supply agreements, potential savings 4 to 6K. Training, again, move to group sessions, use online platforms, seek quarterly training cap, and that's a saving between 2 and 3K. Priority 3, prior meals, that's not going to go down too well with some of the staff. You know, restrict alcohol, that's certainly not going to go down well with some of the staff. Shift more meetings to office virtual meetings, that probably will go down well with some of the staff. Require client name and opportunity ID for every claim to reduce casual spend. So secondary areas, these are low impact, total realistic savings between 8 and 13.5K. One high value next step, would you like me to build a savings plan? And I could just basically say, yes, and it's going to go away now, and it's building me that plan. So away it goes, doing its thing. So a lot of you will already be familiar with some of these tools already, so I appreciate that. But those of you that have never seen it before, that's the simplicity of the way these tools work. I've given it some raw data. This is a nice, easy one, a very simplistic query. We're going to actually really up the game when we put in more complicated queries or prompts. I keep calling them queries. Queries is typically related to a search engine. A prompt is related to an AI bot. So that's our Copilot doing its thing based on that particular raw data. And, you know, it didn't take much time to do it at all. The UK government did an experiment with Office 365 Copilot, looking at particularly its use within Excel and within Outlook. And I thought I'd just share their recent research with you. So this is all part of their government digital service. They identified that on average, for each user, it saved each user 26 minutes a day using Microsoft 365. Results were consistent across grades and professions, with differences observed how the tool was used and benefits were realized. Over 70% of users agreed that, you know, reduced their time on some of those mundane tasks. So telling us what we already know, really, but it's just someone else has performed the research, and those have been published. This was back in June last year. So in terms of Excel, they identified that it automated data summaries. So they used Copilot. and they could basically generate summaries of complex data sets, reduce manual effort, and improve clarity. For people who were unfamiliar with writing advanced queries or formula into Excel, of course, you could just tell it, I'd like to do this. And Copilot goes, yeah, great. I can write a formula for that, or I can write some coding, which will allow you to do that. And then, of course, trend analysis. It helped them to identify patterns or anomalies in department sort of data in terms of performance. It could be, overspend or underspend, etc. And at the end of the day, like with everything, when you look at the reports for the benefits of AI, it is that time-saving element. So in their sort of headline, they estimated that basically, 6 hours was spent on quarterly reporting before. Now that would take basically 45 minutes for Copilot to assist them with. The manual variance analysis was now automated, and basic Excel spreadsheets became interactive dashboards with more complicated queries or formula. So the impact on the business, clear insights, faster strategic decisions, and of course, staff time being freed up, in this case, for more advisory work, which is all positive. So Copilot was seen there as a benefit, productivity, reducing administration, and of course, meeting efficiency targets, which is critical, as we know, for the public sector, private sector as well, but the public sector in particular. Where we're seeing a huge shift as well is utilizing, particularly in the likes of Excel, using formulas such as Benford's law, which we're looking for anomalies, we're looking for things which aren't natural numbers, where we could see someone, for example, cooking the books. We could see someone that basically is submitting information which doesn't, go with the flow, so to speak. It's unusual. That's what Benford's law is all about. And I'll leave you to look up Benford's law. But it's a fantastic tool you can use. You can use a formula in Excel, but AI will do it straight away with no complication. But you're looking for areas where numbers are being manipulated, and you will tend to see it in your expenses, where things it doesn't correlate to the normality of how people would put in numbers. So it's the frequency of numbers appearing. So that's something I'll get you to have a look at if you've never used or heard of Benford's law. It's a critical sort of counter fraud tool that we use. So it's also there to provide, that third set of eyes to reduce sort of the risk side of it from using the detection. That could be, as I've just mentioned, duplicate invoicing, duplicate numbers going into, or a continued trend of people submitting the same expenses month in, month out. So that's that pattern recognition, unusual transactions, etc. So very effective for looking through, again, vast amounts of data on a spreadsheet. In terms of fraud detection in finance operations, the challenges that we face, duplicate information, unusual payments, suspicious vendor relationships. We've now got that AI analysis, which will scan every invoice in real time. It would have been educated in terms of the key things to look for. So ensuring that obviously with VAT numbers, that it matches the VAT number sequence used by HMRC or whichever country that obviously you're being charged for VAT. It also is going to be looking if people use details such as their address or their company reference number. It will cross-reference it with company's house, etc., making sure everything is legitimate from that invoice. So a very effective way when you're doing your due diligence. Now, in the legal sector, when it comes to looking at the legal sector, the reason it matters here, and again, I've taken this from a lot of the legal press that's been producing documentation and reports on the use of AI. Document burden review, it's been estimated that 60 to 80% of lawyer time is spent on matters that could be spent, doing other things, but it's going through just basically reviewing documents. Manual contract review hours. So again, commercial agreements often require multiple review cycles before negotiations even begin. Exploring information volumes, so exploding information volumes, sorry, and that is through, the regulatory case updates, case law, which you have to explore, emails, disclosures, transaction documents, and then client response expectation. People want things faster. We're in that digital world now where having, two teenage daughters, when it comes to something as simple as a television, why is there a commercial? I just want to go on to the next one. Why do I have to wait for the next episode? I want it on demand now. That's the world we're in. And it's the same in our legal practices. It's the same in our accountancy practices. What do you mean I'm going to wait 2 days? I want it now. I don't want it in 2 days' time. Well, you realize it's going to take time. Staff are going to have to do X, Y, and Z if you want a professional service. But Joe Blogs down the road said he can do it within, half an hour of me leaving the boardroom. So why is it going to take you 2 days? So this is becoming the reality. We are in an on-demand world. People want things yesterday, rather than they'd like quality tomorrow. So we've got this perfect storm. It's the increased demand. There's more regulation. There's that fee pressure because, fixed fees, cap costs, etc. But we're having to do things faster, which means to do that, we're going to need more staff. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to meet those deadlines. And of course, you've got talent constraints. So senior review time remains scarce. And of course, as you all know from a legal background or even a accounting background, is expensive. So the result, more work, more complexity, same resource. So that's where AI hopefully can start to assist this particular dilemma. So we can have traditional ways of doing legal work as opposed to the AI augmented workflow. So traditionally, collect the documents, review and read, extract the information, draft, then format, cross-reference, have it checked, redraft, cross-reference, have it checked, redraft finally, then we go through to that final stage. With AI, verification, the analysis, and then client judgment. So we're checking the accuracy, we're validating, we're ensuring compliance, we're identifying issues, we're looking at risk, we're looking at insights, and then we can apply the best advice to our client. It's a much quicker process than going through that traditional route there. Of course, it still requires that cross-reference and that check, that's paramount, but the initial stage is the review, extracting information, drafting, the re-reviewing, extracting information can be automated. So how would it fit into legal work? Just again, something for you to go away with, to think about. So I've tried to make it, as a user-friendly way as possible. And this says legal work, it would be across the board. Gathering information, organizing, analyzing, and then advising. So the AI-led section of this is going to be speed, structure, pattern recognition. The lawyer-led is going to be the verification, the interpretation, and of course, it comes down to that accountability as well, which is why the verification interpretation is critical. So that's how we can share that responsibility with, as I say, that AI implementation. So in terms of cases that it can be used when it comes to research, which is a fundamental part of what happens in the legal sector, it's source map summaries, it's issue scoping for due diligence, it's looking at reporting across large bundles, it's carrying out checks, which traditionally we would do, or would use third-party software to do it. It could be that we're looking at GDPR and privacy, so we're looking at data mapping workflows, checking it against GDPR, checking it against DPA 2018, looking at, for example, it could be with the US, and we're going to check that do we conform with Sarbanes, etc., etc. So it's making sure that we are doing everything that we would need to do. So I'm going to actually get AI to do something for me now, and it's based on, it's not this particular one here, but I've actually put together a story of how it's working, how AI can help us. And of course, I've got AI to draw it for me, but I've given it exactly what I wanted it to say. So we're going to look at contract review and how AI could then scan a contract in seconds to identify any key risks. So we're looking for liability, we're looking at any clauses in terms of termination risk, we're going to look at auto renewal risk, we're looking at anything to do with GDPR risk, looking at various areas. I'm getting AI to take this contract, to review it, highlight the areas, then I can look at it, rather than getting one of my junior member staff saying, I know it's a 200-page contract, but can you basically glance over it and do this, this, and this? That's going to take time. Whereas AI is going to sit there and say, okay, give me a minute, and I'll be able to perform that search for you. So that's what I want to do in this demo here. So what I'm actually going to do here, is I'm going to load up a contract and I'm going to give it a prompt to extract the information for me. So just bear with me whilst I get the, keep clicking on the wrong button there. I'm just going to get my relevant information for this here. So let me just grab my prompt. Now for this one here, I'm actually going to use ChatGPT. So I'm going to switch over, I'm going to go to my ChatGPT. Now, what I need to do first of all is I need to upload the contract. So I'm going to add my contract here. No, I don't want to add photos. I actually want to add my, desktop. I want to add my, so I know why it's asking to add photos, because I need to just going to switch just very briefly. I'm just going to go to Gemini. I just need to switch. I need to log into ChatGPT for it to do documents as well. It won't do that for me. So I'm going to come to Gemini. It will do exactly the same. So I'm just going to upload those photos. Just, what are they for? I do a lot of open source work, so I train police how to find the bad guys online. And they're just some of the cases that we go through. So I'm just going to go to the relevant area where my document is. I've got a contract, which I'm basically uploading. So I've got my contract uploaded to Gemini, and then I'm going to put in my prompt. So explain this contract in plain English for a project manager with no legal background, avoid legal jargon, use bullet points, highlight what the supplier must do and what the customer must do. So it's just a very simple, easy prompt there. And then I'm going to submit that prompt. So this is a contract which is from Transport for London, from the Mayor of London, sorry, to do with TfL. So here we've got the information which is now being provided. As we can see, it's going through what the supplier must do, etc. So it's read the document. It's taken me to the page on the PDF, which is what these PDF references are. So it'll actually take me to that section, what the customer, the authority must do, etc. So that's a document there, which is, if I was just to open it, let me just very quickly open it for you. I believe it's in like 200 pages. It is, it's 200 pages. So that's a 200-page document, and that's the information that it's extracted for me. I could do exactly the same through Copilot because we could compare. So we can compare what's what when we come to actually use these tools. So that's again something that, like I say, for somebody to sit down to receive that document, to go through page by page, looking for those specific areas, that's going to take longer than the time that you saw for it to process through Gemini. So let me just go back to my slide just for a moment. So that's a very quick example of how we could use Gemini to go through that particular review for me. On a due diligence side, again, before traditional review and then after an AI assisted review. So with our due diligence, and this is again something that I do a lot for clients, basically showing them how to use open source intelligence for an internet investigation. Not because you're looking for a bad person, but because you're actually want to do background work, because you're just about to appoint a new CEO, you're just about to appoint, let's say, a new trustee into a charity, etc. You want to make sure you're doing those proper background checks. So this is all that due diligence process, and it can now be streamlined when we're utilizing AI. So we've got the before and the after, which again, I've tried to word them. So this is when you return after this course, you return back to work, you can open these slides and then it just gives you the analysis of, well, this is what we once did, but now, yeah, we can actually now automate the extraction if we give AI the sources where we would usually get that information from when we're going through all the different areas that we need to check. We can actually have a faster turnaround because, again, this is quite intensive when we're doing, sort of informed and involved due diligence checks. It could also be that we're actually going to utilize it for employment or GDPR support or DPA support. So it could be that we can ask AI to look at certain policies and procedures. It could be that it's going to basically compare, current policies with obligations under particular, rules and laws, etc. Like I was saying, under employment law. Or it could be that, it's going to be helping us with privacy notices, or it could be drafting vendor clause reviews, etc. So these are all areas that we could get AI. I've put a big safeguard in here, which comes back to one of the points raised earlier in the questions, to never upload anything that hasn't been redacted information on the client or any personal data into a public tool. Even if you're paying for it, I still wouldn't take that risk. It's silly. So use approved enterprise environments that retain that human review trail. So that those paid for services, but I would still retract information. You shouldn't be uploading a document which has got the subject there, the data subject that is named, or other individuals or even company details. You would sort of redact as a result of that. So my next demo is under that category of HR or DPA advice. So again, with this one, I'm going to, again, just bring some information over. So just bear with me as I go to my next prompt here. So this is going to be my next one here. So let me just get the first prompt here. So I've called this one just to give comparison. So this is going to go, I'll put this into Gemini again. Well, actually, no, we'll use ChatGPT. I'll switch up a bit because we didn't use it last time because I needed to make a change for it to upload documents. But I've put my prompt in here. An employee submitted a grievance on a data subject at risk covering 3 years of emails, Slack messages, WhatsApp communications. Their solicitor also alleges that HR has unlawfully retained medical information. What legal issues should a UK employer consider and what should it do next? Now, that's what would be considered, a lazy prompt because, it's fairly lengthy, but we could get a lot more out of it. So let's just run that first of all and see, well, how could we modify that? So this is now coming back. And obviously, with its access, looking at the relevant legislation, it's coming back and it's basically giving me sort of the concerns that I'm looking for, etc. So we can see here, these are the issues under the various sections I've mentioned that it's reporting back on. And we can see that goes all the way down. And then we've got our sort of practical next steps, risk management, and that will take us to the bottom. Now, if I wanted to put in a more advanced query, then let me just share with you what would be considered a more advanced query. So again, I'm just going to borrow this from the document that I've got open. So this is quite a lengthy prompt here, as you'll see. It's not your sort of standard prompt, but I want to get the best out of this. And I'm giving it as much intel, like I'm writing an email to one of my junior members of staff saying, this is what I want you to do, A, B, C, D, and E. So here we have basically, we've got you pay employer, the practice has received a formal grievance. This is about bullying, hostile working environment, state subject to arrest, requesting all the Slack messages, WhatsApp communications, etc. During the 3 years, we've got a letter from the employer's solicitor alleging unlawful retention under the current UK law, including, and I'm giving you the law that I want it to look at, identify the employer's legal obligations, explain whether the solicitor's correspondence triggers any statutory complaint handling obligations, analyse how the employer should approach a reasonable and proportionate search for large volumes of unstructured data, identify the principle of employment law, data protection and litigation risk, distinguish clearly between mandatory legal requirements, ICO guidance, recommended best practice, and then produce an executive summary for general counsel, a practical action plan for HR, etc., 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 approximately 400 words. And then cite relevant ICO guidance, relevant legislation, leading authorities that have been relied upon. Where law is uncertain, explain the competing interpretations and state any assumptions made. So that's quite a lengthy prompt, but we are going to get so much more out of our tool than we are from the previous prompts there. So that's going to be going away, checking, doing our executive summary. So that's going to be working away. So it's because of the length I need to treat with the people legislation, it's better produced as a single structured document rather than a condensed one. So basically what it's saying is it could produce a document up to 9,000 words. It's broken it down into the areas. And all I need to go through now is say, generate number 1, generate number 2, and it'll automate it. So it will generate each of those areas, which I'm not going to do now because that will take too much time. But it's identified it, it's put in all the areas, and then I can actually request that it looks at and generates the sections. But it's estimated this is between 6,000 and 9,000 words that it can generate for me. So that's a much more complicated prompt, but we are getting a much more complicated response, which we can then use as a result of that. So hopefully that demonstrates from a fairly straightforward prompt, and we're getting, a relatively lengthy number, fairly lengthy response, sorry. But then when we actually advance that, we're getting a lot more detail. So when it comes to AI-powered legal workflow, or again, like when I was talking about accounting, this could apply across the board, even though I'm using the terms legal or accounting or finance. We've got the research, we've got the AI summary, we've got the verification, the analysis, and then we've got the clear recommendations, i.e. delivering that client advice. So human involvement intensifies from step 3 onwards. So we get AI to do 1 and 2. We're then involved in verification, certainly on the legal analysis, and then we are the individual that would then be in contact with the client with that information. So I've said here, your AI trainee, your AI junior, they assist you. It's the solicitor that actually decides. And these are some of the top tools, again, that get mentioned. Some of you have mentioned them already in some of the queries there, so you'll be familiar with some of these. But they're not for me to go through or demonstrate any of these. It's just a reminder there. And I've tried to categorize them under what's considered research, what's considered for productivity, for practice management, and then for contract transaction work. So hopefully that's of use to those of you that have never seen or heard of these tools before. And then first AI use. Again, this is looking at the first time that we could actually use AI. And I've mentioned this before. It's picking a particular task that you've got just so that you can run a pilot. So take a particular low mundane task, contract summary, clause extraction, legal research, run your pilot, learn from that, adapt it, modify it, use different platforms that you believe best fit what you and your environment is, so it fits in with the culture of your environment. Verify every output during the pilot stage. Look at how much time it is saving you. It may be an occasion where you're having to do so much verification yourself, it's not saving you time, but I would like to think it does. And then scale. Then you increase the scale as you deliver more and more into your organization. So you're basically keeping it under control. So chatbots. Chatbots are what we're going to move into. We've already started to look at them, but we're just going to look at them in a little bit more detail. This is your co-pilots, ChatGPT and Gemini. So before we do this, I've got a poll to run for you. So this is poll number 6. This is from my team behind the scenes. So poll number 6 is what we're looking at here. And what I want you to basically tell me is, which AI assistant do you think is currently the best fit for your professional workflow? Would it be Copilot? So, you're using it with Word, with Outlook, with Excel, ChatGPT, so drafting, summarizing, workflow automation, or Gemini for that deep research and structured reasoning? Or you're still exploring, you're not sure. You're waiting for me to give you some more information before you can make that decision. So which of those is a best fit for your organization, for your professional workflow? So we'll leave that poll open for a few moments and then we'll close, we'll share the results with you, and then we'll start looking in a bit more detail about our chatbots. Okay, thank you for those results there. So there is a clear winner there. We can see that the winner is Copilot. No surprise there, as most people are Microsoft houses. It just goes to show that if you're a Microsoft house, you will use Copilot. We've got ChatGPT, a few of you using Gemini, and quite a few of you still exploring the options, which is brilliant. And I guess that's your curiosity of being with us here today. So thank you for that. So we'll just close that poll and we will move on to look at, okay, if we're still undecided, what more can you tell us? What can we do? So when we look at the landscape, although we're not going to go to Claude, I've included it because it is, one of those big 4 players, and that's more on the document analysis, which is why I just wanted to mention it. But for those of you that sort of gave your votes, particularly to Copilot, typically it's because you're using it with the apps that you have on a day-to-day basis. If you're using Outlook, Microsoft, using Word, if you're using Teams. ChatGPT, it's that general intelligence. It's very flexible in its approach. It is the one which we'll see later. We'll go through some tests that I've given these to see which are good and which are bad. Gemini, very much research. Gemini, because of the database it has, because it's Google backed, and that sort of philosophy that's through Google, it's all about that deep mind, deep research. So they are your big players in terms of where people are using it in general. We're seeing from the Copilot analysis, research, content creation, ChatGPT, where it's being used, again, analysis, research, and content creation to an extent. We've got Gemini, not so much for content creation, but research, document analysis, workspace productivity. That's with its suite of tools such as Sheets, etc. And then Claude, reviewing of policies, audit documentation, and risk and compliance analysis, just due to the way the engine works on that particular tool. So that's where we're seeing the most application to these particular tools. So the future for accountants, and I should say lawyers as well, as using AI has become faster, it's now more productive, and as I stated already, more strategic aligned. So let's put these to the test. Let's have a look at these. So they offer power, but they aren't purpose-built for accountants or for lawyers. People believe that, oh yeah, Copilot is built purely for someone in the account. It's not. We can use it to do many different things, far, far away from the world of accountancy. And likewise with Gemini, thinking I can't use that for accounts. Yes, you could. and you could with ChatGPT. Copilot obviously is the one because you're integrating it with Excel, and most of your financial data will be in an Excel format, but it could be that you're a Google Sheets user, and therefore Copilot wouldn't be as useful to you as Gemini would. So let's have a look at these side by side. So what I did is I actually asked these. Now, I'm not going to do everything live because sometimes it just takes a bit of time for me to type and for the response to come back. So I've done some sort of screenshots here, but the first one here was asking ChatGPT. And I said, write a simple sentence to explain how ChatGPT can help an accountant in the UK. So I've picked on accountants for this one. And it's come back saying, I can, automate routine tasks. I can summarize financial information. I can assist but assist with tax, compliance, and client communication. That's ChatGPT. So I said, what can you do faster than an accountant? Said, one task I can do faster is I can summarize a lengthy financial report into key points and actions within seconds, whereas it's saying your accountant would take longer, and it would do. We can't argue against that. You couldn't do it in seconds. So they're the responses from ChatGPT. We asked the same to Google Gemini. So the first thing is, what can you do to help an accountant? We can automate routine data organization in spreadsheets. We can summarize HMRC tax updates. We can draft clear advisory reports for clients. Well, what can you do which makes you better than an accountant or faster? And Gemini can extract from hundreds of scanned receipts and automatically categorize them in standardized spreadsheets in seconds, a task that would take into account hours of manual data entry. Sounds a bit like fighting talk there, saying, it would take you hours, I can do it within seconds. So they really are selling themselves, but you'd expect them to do so. So let's go to Copilot. What can you do to help an accountant? I can analyze financial data, turning it into clear, accurate insights. I thought that was a pretty weak response, bearing in mind how it could implement and utilize Excel. That was a really, really weak response. Quite surprised, actually, that came back. What one can you do faster? Again, I was surprised at this. Data reconciliation. I thought Copilot's come back and going, I can do everything faster than an accountant. I am the spreadsheet god, but it didn't. I can scan, match, flag inconsistencies across thousands of transactions far faster than any human accountant. So there we go. So I thought, sneakily, let's just ask Claude. Claude said, instantly answered tax compliance questions. There's a real fascination. I don't know what's going on with HMRC and these bots. Perhaps they've been told always pay homage to HMRC or tax. I don't know. But what could you do quicker? I could draft emails in seconds where an accountant might spend 10 to 15 minutes. I mean, that's a big call. Would it take 10 to 15 minutes? Could do. Depends how quickly you type, if you know what to type, and the length of the email. But I thought that was an interesting response from Claude. There's not a poll on which one did you prefer, but you can make your own minds up on that. So let's have a look a little bit more of these under the spotlight. So we know with Copilot, we can use it in Excel, Word, PowerPoint. We can use it in Outlook. We can use it in Teams. So let's give it a little example. Let's give it an exercise. So open an Excel ledger with expense data, and then my prompt is going to be summarize the top 3 spending categories and identify any anomalies over time. So I've got to first of all go to Copilot, and I'm going to do a new chat so it's not confused with the previous data. I then need to go to my data, which I'm just going to open up on my other screen here. So just bear with me whilst I'm just opening the data that we need. So I'm just going to bring over some raw data. There is a spreadsheet as well, but I'm just going to actually bring some raw data over. So let's just get that. So this is just some raw data. So I'm just going to copy everything here. And I'm going to bring it over. So this is going to look a bit messy, but this is just a series of raw data that I've actually put in. So I haven't actually opened up a spreadsheet. This was in a notepad document where I've just basically put everything in. It looks messy, and for a human to analyze that, I think, oh, come on, you could give it to me in a better format. But we're dealing with AI here, so it doesn't really matter. And all I then need to do is I now need to put in my prompt. So once I've got my data, oops, let me switch back to Copilot. Then I need to put in my prompt, and let me just copy that from there. It saves me typing. And we can go back to my prompt here. So let's just, oops, don't want ChatGPT, I just want Copilot. Where's Copilot gone? So Seems I've just closed it down, so just bear with me. This is lovely doing things live. So now I've got that. I'm now going to put that question in first. It says I haven't got anything. I'm now going to get the data. So let me just copy the data now. And then hopefully we will get it to do it. So let me just get that information, go to copy. And then we're going to paste later. So there is our information. And hopefully now you'll understand that I've given that data after I've put in the prompt. You can put the prompt to the data together. It's just because being trigger happy, I actually closed down Copilot rather than minimize it. So I've asked for those top 3 spending categories from that raw data. It's brought back the information here. It's given a pattern. It's given an insight into the information under the particular categories. Category spend over time, so we can just see month on month change. Any anomalies we can see here. And then advertising, high value transactions, concise takeaways for your advisory work. Travel is the largest, most consistent cost driver, etc. If you want, I can then break this down into a visual, a department level anomaly report, or a policy optimization recommended report. So it's advising what it can do. I might have a totally different idea what I want to do, and I can put in my own query. So you can see there again, this is the beauty of Copilot. I've given it raw data. It's looked at it, it's analysed, it's given me the report back. I could do that either in Copilot directly, or of course I could be in Excel and I could run it in Excel because I've got that data open in on my data sheet. So that's just one example there where we could utilise Copilot. So if you are a Microsoft user, then it goes hand in hand that you'd be using Copilot. So we've been able to analyse the data set, identify any anomalies, suggest cost savings, and then we can do comparisons with other data, etc. So that's our first sort of demo there. What did it reveal? It reveals rapid anomaly detection, identifying issues that might have taken hours to manually spot. It can find issues with overspend in certain categories, unusual vendor process patterns, or seasonal variations that suggest budgeting adjustments. The speed is clear, as we just saw there. It didn't take much time at all. It was more my time actually copying and pasting the data in. So speed and accuracy, category insight, and actionable recommendations are all the key strengths there of Copilot. So now we can have another scenario. We could say, okay, and this is one that we could give to, let's say, to Copilot again, or I could share this amongst any of the other platforms. I've got a challenge. I've got an acquisition scenario, target company, CloudServe Limited. I've got the basic information there. I want you to act as a corporate solicitor, prioritize review activities, identify material risks, and prepare a due diligence summary from that very simple data there. That's just the data it has. So again, we could go back to our Copilot. We can put in a new chat. So it just alleviates the previous chat there. I'm just going to go to get the information that I need, again, just to save me typing that in. So I'm going to put in, first of all, the raw data. So I'm just going to copy that from my Word document. So I'm just on another screen, copying that, pasting that in. And then I'm going to put in my query, which is the one that you just saw on the screen there a moment ago. So I'm going to act as a solicitor, and I'm going to ask the following questions, which we're going to see here. And then I'm going to run that in Copilot. So that's my target company. I want it to act as the corporate solicitor, prioritize review, manual look at, identify material risks, prepare due diligence summary, and it's still going away. But as I scroll down, you can see it's looking at the due diligence prioritization. So customer contracts, software licenses, supplier agreements, medium priority, lower priority, and then material risks identified. And as we carry on, as we carry on down, so it's more scrolling, not doing the best, this tracker pad. As we go down, we can see we've got the due diligence summary. So this is the key findings, risks, operational risks, financial risks, and then the recommended steps, etc. So again, from that prompt there, you can see how quickly it's just basically prepared that, which you would obviously then glance over to think this is actually good, or actually, no, this is not what we wanted. And again, it's down to the more you use these, because you're using your enterprise version, it's going to learn from you. It knows what you would be expecting. It knows also the level of response that you'd want. So again, you can make those changes. In terms of level of response, you also have, which we don't have time to run it through all of this, but you can actually set a different sort of bot to do the work. So at the moment, it defaults to smart. It may be that I want it to go deeper, think deeper. And if, depending what enterprise level you pay for, then you've got better tools at your disposal across all the 3 platforms that we are talking about here. So that's put Copilot there through its tasks. ChatGPT, content generation, automation support, so generating automated code if we're a code writer, writing Python, for example, doing our analysis, doing our research, looking at connecting with other platforms. So you can use what's called an API, an application programming interface. So it can actually connect. It's the back end of another database. So you can have an API for Companies House for HMRC. So you're actually tapped in. An example, we could say to ChatGPT, draft an expense reimbursement policy following UK accounting standards. And then we could refine it, but I'm going to do it all as one, adjust the tone for the inclusion professional accounting manual. So rather than me doing one and then saying adjust it just to save time, I can do that as one prompt. So we're going to do this in ChatGPT, and that will take us then, that will take us to our second comfort break. So we're going to do our new chat. We're going to ask for our expense policy. So I'm just going to basically copy that text and paste that in. So again, my prompt is exactly the same as what we saw on the screen there. And then we'll run that for ChatGPT. So it's now creating my travel expense reimbursement policy for me. As we can see, it's being created here. So that's there, ready for me. Basically, it's putting me in a format ready for me to obviously review first, then cut and paste and put it into, or it'll provide it in a PDF should I wish it to do so at the end. So that takes us nicely to 11 o'clock. So that's our next comfort break for today. So we're going to have a 10-minute break. We'll come back. We're going to continue on our journey looking at these tools. If there have been any questions, it gives me the opportunity to look at those now. Or if there are any questions, please put them into the Q&A box, which I'll look at either at the beginning of the next session, or we will look at questions when we close play today. But make sure you stretch your legs, make sure you get yourself a refreshment. I'll see you back here in 10 minutes. See you soon. Okay, hope everybody is back. Hopefully you enjoyed your break there. I will come back to some of the questions probably at the end of the session, because some of the bits that questions have been asked we will be covering in this last section. But then I will make sure that I've answered all those when we sort of close play today. And like I said, anything you can think of after this session, then by all means do email me. So keeping with how we can utilize the big 3 tools, when I've been talking earlier about the complexity of tax, that's where AI can come in and assist us. It can provide us with sort of almost like a plain English definition or explanation. It can try and break down in a simple way, you know, what the latest sort of bit of tax legislation is. It can give us worked examples, so it can give us scenarios. It can provide sort of information that would illustrate how that would apply to our client or our own situation. It could also, again, be on the area of raising flags in terms of compliance. So it can provide, you know, essential information as and when something has changed, typically with tax codes. So another very quick example where we could use AI, and I've kept them simplistic, but I could go to Copilot, or I could go to ChatGPT, as we've done quite a bit I could go to Gemini, sorry, or ChatGPT, as we've done quite a bit on Copilot. And I could put in the prompt that you can see here. And these are prompts which you can all try, obviously, after this course. So I've put them all into these slides. So I'm advising a client on VAT treatment for cross-border digital services. How do I explain the VAT rules and requirements for this scenario? So again, it's just a case of going to the tool that I wish to use. So if I want to go, in this case, let's just switch over now to Gemini again. Put in my new chat, put in my query, and then I can basically upload that query. Now it looks a little bit weird where I've cut and pasted in there. It's just the formatting, so it doesn't make any difference to the tool that you're using. It just reads the words. Doesn't matter that it's not in a perfect format. And so it's coming back and saying, right, okay, based on that query, that initial query, this is the information I provide. Step 1, step 2. So we're getting a very detailed response that we can see here that we can go through with references, which is always the important section. It will always reference, and that's the thing that for a while actually with Gemini, or formerly when it was Google Bard, it didn't have that. Copilot always did. Copilot was sort of the first to do that, which you would expect from Microsoft. But then it took Google a while to actually add that, because people were actually getting concerned and not trusting it, thinking, well, that's great, you've told me that, but back up your sources. Where did you get that from? This is then saying, would you like a template script or an email draft sent directly to your client? Explain this. It's saying, or giving the option for yes. So it's always good to see, well, how would it go about this? What would it do? And now it's writing my email for me. And again, this is where you would get AI to put all the groundwork in, but there's no way that I'd actually be sending that straight to a client without reviewing it first. So it's giving me this information in a template that I could use. But of course, we would want to go through, we would want to validate all of the information that's been provided, particularly in that email, because obviously this is us giving the advice and we're liable because this is advice from us, whichever firm we are. So that's just another quick demonstration of the use, in that case there, of Google Gemini. In terms of thinking about Gemini again, I could be asking the question, I'm not going to do all these, but I've given you examples that obviously you can go away and look at. You're my AI strategy advisor. I'm a legal director of a UK mid-sized firm. Give me 5 practical ways AI can reduce risk and improve decision-making across legal operations, including examples for case study, compliance and fraud, misconduct detection. Keep it board level. So I'm not going to do that now. That's one that you can try after today, either through any of them, but try it through Gemini. And then compare it by trying it then through, okay, we'll put that same prompt into ChatGPT. Copilot will see what responses we get. Now, keeping with Gemini, one of the bonuses with Gemini, and you can do this through ChatGPT, but it's one of the areas that it's a strength of Gemini, is you can provide it with a document. So here I've got a 142-page PDF, and I want it to basically analyze it and give me a summary. So I've actually requested, can you summarize this document for me in a clear way? And I've given the URL, which is where the document was downloaded from, or I can actually upload the document in question. And then once I've run that prompt, in this case, Gemini has come back and it's given me basically the key points from that particular document. So I haven't had to read 142 pages. It's come back and then it's given me the report based on my query. I want a summarize of this document in a clear way. It's making sure your prompt or your query specifies exactly what you expect to get when you run that particular task. Now, just very briefly, Google search is obviously different to doing a Google Gemini search. So Google search is your traditional standard. You put in your query and you get the results back, which basically is links to websites. So when we use the Google search engine, we're just basically accessing a database, which happens to be the largest database in the search engine world, which has all the areas indexed. When it crawls the web for information, it runs algorithms, including the PageRank algorithm, and then you get your associated data back. That's a Google search. When you're doing an AI search, it's very different. So if I put in new rules on setting our company in the UK as a search or as a query in the standard search, all Google is doing is it's giving me links to companies where it can find some of those words, or it's trying to match that phrase with what's on these company websites in terms of what they've been indexed by. If I do the same thing through the bot element of it, so you'll notice now when you go into Google search or into Bing search, you've got AI as an option. You can go through and it does exactly what we've done here. It comes back and it's actually not giving me links to websites going, well, this information is here, 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 and here. It's going, actually, this is what you need to know. So this is now what I'm actually going to give you. And that's just a screenshot or a video I've taken. I won't run the video of that particular response from Gemini. ChatGPT, audit preparation, generate comprehensive audit preparation checklist. I use ChatGPT for when I do open source work, particularly when I'm training audiences from police to working with banks to working with governments. I will always suggest now that if you don't have a worksheet in terms of a checklist of what you should do as part of this part or that part of your due diligence or your operation, I have various individuals working with me. It could be 1 minute I'm working with the National Crime Agency and we're hunting down paedophiles and terrorists, to someone doing a very simple due diligence check because they want to appoint a new treasurer to a charity. So it's having a checklist of the key things that you should ask. So this is where ChatGPT really does come into its own. Tax memorandum. So I've sort of focused a little bit more on the theme of, the audience here today. So draft detailed tax memos, summarize complex legislation into client-friendly language. Training support, so you could simulate client Q&A sessions and create training materials. You can run simulations for your staff and your technical or your legal accounting teams. And data automation. So if you wanted to, if you're a coder, you can generate the code to help you. If you're not a coder, it doesn't really matter because with AI, you can actually get it to generate the code for you, which would be Python or VBA, which is Visual Basic Scripts, etc. So it provides a particularly valuable asset when it comes to your content creation, logic-based automation tasks, etc. So that's the key strength of ChatGPT. So an exercise could be, and I'm not going to do all of these live, create an internal audit checklist for revenue recognition under IFRS 15. Then I could refine it and say, format this into bulleted points suitable for staff guidance and or training. It would even produce the training slides for me as well. So that's another way we could really manipulate how we could use ChatGPT. Gemini, live regulatory updates, as I've already mentioned, current communications, formula validation, if we're using sheets in particular, document processing, and also many other areas of that research side as well. Another area that you could consider as a prompt for Gemini, and these are just to give you some ideas of things, and actually I will run this one for you. It could be that you've got an invoice, a scanned invoice that someone's just provided you, or it could be a scanned expense. I could say, extract the total VAT and the supplier details, and then ask, are there any common errors that might arise if this invoice is entered in incorrectly? So that's my prompt. Obviously, I need to get the document as well. So let me just go to Gemini. We'll do a new chat. So what I need to do here is I need to get my prompt, and then we are going to, let me just get my prompt here. So this is my prompt that I'm going to use. Let's bring it over to Gemini. So there is my prompt. And then I need to add the invoice. So I'm going to upload a file here. This is going to be an image file. So what I have is I've actually got an image of the invoice which has been sent to me. I'm going to open that. So there's the image, and I'm going to get Gemini to review the image, which is the invoice, or it could be expenses, receipts, etc. And it's going to look at the areas that I'm interested in. Total, VAT, supplier details. So it says, here are the exact details. So it's looked at the image and it's extracting what I've been asking for, total, VAT, supplier details, then ask what common errors. So what common errors, and then it's giving me that as the file, fake invoice, McAfee suggests this is a classic subscription renewal scam. Entering this as a legitimate invoice could result in the company losing 400, in this case, US dollars. Incorrect supplier assignment. The document features prominent logos for both McAfee and PayPal. A data entry clerk might mistakenly log the vendor as PayPal instead of McAfee or vice versa. So this is one, it's an invoice I've created myself, knowing that there are issues with that invoice, and hopefully none of you, particularly those in finance, would actually pass that to be paid. But we're using Gemini to actually look at it, to actually say, okay, provide me this detail, which is extracted, the total VAT, the supplier details, but then these are the areas that I'm really drilling down into, is questioning the possibilities of fraud. So that's, again, a really useful undertaking of Gemini. But we could do that across the others as well, but it's a key strength of this particular tool. So on our generative AI, there are some do's and don'ts. There are good things and bad things, some do's and don'ts. I'm not going to go through the do's and don'ts at this stage, the pros and cons of them. You have them in your slides. It would take me too long, and it would actually eat over our time today to go through. But what I've created lists for you so that when you're looking at the platforms that I've looked at today, whether you're looking at Copilot, whether you're looking at Gemini, whether you're looking at ChatGPT, you'll see the sort of summarization of what's good and what's not so good. So I'll leave you to look at those. Something that you might want to do, this is not an exercise for me to do now, it's an exercise for you, is actually matching the platforms to your organization. Which one is the best fit? So are you a Microsoft-based firm? Are you a hybrid technology firm? Are you a Google Workspace firm? And based on what you are, that will make a decision easy for you in terms of which of those chatbots that you should really be looking at or focusing on. But personally, I'd be looking at all three, but you would have a focus on one particular option. Particularly if you're a Microsoft-based firm, it's a no-brainer. It's going to be Copilot because it's there. If you are a Google Workspace firm, then again, if you're using Sheets, etc., it's going to be Gemini. If you're a hybrid, then you can have Google, you can use Microsoft, you can use ChatGPT. But of course, if you're a Microsoft firm, you can still use ChatGPT for the other areas which Copilot is weak on. And I would actually say this is me. This is not from any survey that I've done. From over the last 2 or 3 years, I've been using these tools. For me, the weakest one is Copilot. Fantastic for Excel, etc. But when it comes to creating content, when it comes to can you create this, can you analyze this, it's weak in comparison to Google and to ChatGPT. That's in my experience. But for anything in relation to can you look at this spreadsheet, can you look at this Teams meeting, can you create this from my schedule, can you do this for me? It's great. It's the old Clippy that used to have many, many years ago, that really annoying paperclip. That is sort of the reincarnation of Clippy, is sort of the Copilot that we see today. It's that helpful tool. When it comes to some of the other areas, looking at doing research, looking at doing the analysis side, when we're looking at documents, it's probably not as switched, that's my opinion, as the other two that we've looked at so far. So that's your sort of roadmap to the future. So for generative AI, are you a Copilot user? Are you going to be a ChatGPT user? Or are you considering the use of Gemini, or indeed all three? So hopefully that gives you some more pointers to consider going forward. Good prompts, bad prompts. That makes a huge difference. If I put in a prompt into any of those platforms saying, tell me about tax changes, it's like me saying to any of you there who is a tax expert going, tell me about tax changes. I'd be very bad if I did that, because those of you with a tax experience, I know you'd love to tell me about tax changes, and I'd probably regret asking you that question. But if I'm asking AI, it's going, well, there's no context. It's vague. It's broad. It's unclear. There's no indication of format, depth. What do you want to know? Is it tax changes here? Or are you talking about tax changes in Argentina? Where focus. So I could then have a prompt, which would be a good prompt, act as a finance expert, summarize the key changes to UK corporation tax rates announced in the spring budget 2024, include effective dates, main inputs for businesses, main impacts, I should say, sorry, not inputs for business, and any transitional rules, present the output in a table followed by a brief summary. So it's clear, it's specific, it defines what to be included, it's giving the format that I want it back in, and it's more likely to give you accurate results and a relevant output as opposed to the first prompts that we see there. So I'm not going to run these now. These are prompts that you can go away and look at. If I had time, I would go through all these individually. But this is an example here where I have a spreadsheet which basically contains month-end data. And I've said, act as a senior finance business partner. I'll provide you with the month-end numbers. So you've obviously got to provide, in this case, ChatGPT with the numbers. Your task is to identify the 5 most material variances, explain the drivers in plain English, suggest actions for budget holders, draft a narrative suitable for a board pack, produce a short version and a long version, use a confident advisory tone, and avoid generic statements. That's my prompt for ChatGPT. Again, I'd need to provide it with the data, but if I'm in Copilot and I'm wanting to put together a board presentation pack, my prompt could be, you're assisting with the board presentation pack using the content in the Excel workbook, which would be open, or I'd be giving it the Excel workbook, produce a summary of key financial movements, a bulleted list of risks and mitigations, a draft CEO-style narrative, keep the tone professional, concise, highlight any inconsistencies you detect across the documents. So it's, again, I could be offering it more than one document. And I've given the reason why that works for Copilot, as I did beforehand, why it worked for ChatGPT. And then my final one, nothing to upload here, but this is to Gemini. You're acting as a tax research analysis for a UK finance team, summarize the latest HMRC guidance, tribunal decisions and authoritative commentary relating to VAT treatment for mixed-use property developments, provide a clear explanation of rules, edge case and common misinterpretations, decision tree the financial team can then use, and citations to source material. Present it in a structured, concise, suitable for inclusion in a finance policy document, etc. So it's being consistent and giving as much info, that you can into your prompts. This is not my work. This is actually the work of, again, different surveys that have been done out there. I also got the AI bots to grade themselves. So as well as looking at what's been produced in this sort of typical academic media, I then said, right, we're looking at these areas here. So we're looking at this. This is for finance team, but I didn't do one for legal teams. But I was just saying, using Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, and I did include Claude. Tell me about the capability, how you would rate it for analyzing Excel, financial reporting, doing research, creating long documents, etc., etc. And these are the ratings that are from, like I say, academic media. But I also got the AI tools to grade themselves as well. And they weren't that biased. So on some of them, to give them credit. So in Copilot, for example, for policy review, it starred itself as 3-star. So that's, again, just a point thing to note there. It wasn't saying, I'm wonderful, I'm 5-star across the board. So thinking about the risks, etc. So this is now my final poll for today. This is poll 7. So we're now thinking about risks, particularly in finance and the legal sector. So the poll here is, which potential risk concerns you the most when using tools like Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini in your professional work? Is it incorrect or fabricated outputs, hallucinations? Is it confidential sensitive data exposure, regulatory or ethical compliance issues, or is it over-reliance on AI for that critical decision thinking or decision making? So which of those is the one that would worry you the most in your professional work? There are many other risks I could put there, but they're the ones which the echoes a lot of risks that are out there currently. So I'm just interested which one would be a concern to you. So we'll leave the poll open just for a few more moments, then we'll share the results with you. Okay, so the polls are in. Thank you again for taking part in the polls. And what we can see here, we've got a big percentage incorrect or fabricated information, hallucinations, confidential or sensitive data exposure, regulatory and ethical compliance issues, only a small response there, and then over-reliance, we've got sort of 12% of you. But the big ones there, and again, I would be with you on those, as are other audiences as well. It's those hallucinations, and it's that potential exposure to confidential or private data or sensitive data. So thank you for taking part in those polls. That makes, gives me a bit more of an insight, and hopefully it makes it a bit more interactive for yourselves as well. So what do we need to think about going forward here? We need to think about the risks. We need to think about accuracy. We need to think about hidden bias. So when I talk about hidden bias, as I've stated here, training data may contain biases that affect recommendations from a hiring decision to, a lending assessment requiring careful oversight. We are actually seeing now, particularly organizations that use AI to do their, new recruit screening, there could be hidden biases in there. So AI straight away is going, reject that one, reject that one, reject that one because of some bias. Whereas if we had that human element, that wouldn't be the case. So that has been highlighted as a risk, as a concern. Accuracy, I think, speaks for itself. Confidentiality, likewise, I think, speaks for itself. And the evolving regulation. We know that regulation is changing. We know, particularly for those lawyers out there, that you're going to be very busy advising clients in relation to AI because of the changes we're seeing over not just in the UK, but globally, but also in the individual membership organizations or regulatory bodies. So the SRA, Solicitors Regulation Authority, the ICAW, etc. So we are seeing an evolutionary change, I should say, in the regulation around this, which is something I mentioned at the very beginning, where we had the big heads of these tech companies meeting to consider safeguards. And that's been the news over the last few years when we've been really buying in more and more into AI. I've just captured some headlines here, which I thought was quite useful. AI chatbots now get the news wrong 1 out of 3. That was in the Times. We've got the sort of in August 2025, we've got the lowest fail rate to the highest fail rate. So out of the AI tools, the one that fails the most is a platform called Inflection. Some of you might have used Perplexity. That was scoring really low. Personally, I don't like Perplexity. Even though Meta was one of the most used in terms of its accuracy and its performance, it's not as good as people would think. Likewise, ChatGPT, Copilot, the one that's up there is Claude, followed by Gemini. So that, again, just gives you an insight. That's from another survey. That's not my survey. And that's not AI. That's done by Forbes in one of their pieces of research. So we are starting to see more of this and some of this doubt that comes through. So I thought, let's put it to an experiment. Let's do my own experiment. And I put in a question, or I'm going to give a question to these three platforms, and I've made this all up, and I want to see how they perform. I've said, which firm in the UK implemented Accounts GPT for expense management and achieved positive results? The system identified duplicate travel claims that manual reviews had missed, saving £25,000 annually. Utter rubbish. I have made that up. Let's see how our AI tools manage that. So that's my data. Savings of 25,000, policy compliance 100%, processing speed increased by 85%. This is not true. This is a made up example. So I'm going to look at the query with Gemini. Which UK firm implemented the Accounts GPT for expense management, achieved those results? The system identified blah, 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 blah. It's come back saying BDO. Rubbish. I don't know if there's any BDO members here today, but it wasn't BDO UK. BDO UK, they don't use Accounts GPT. It does actually exist, but it's not being used by BDO, and it didn't claim travel claims and achieve 25,000. It's all made up. I have made it up, but it's come back and said BDO. So I've challenged and said, have you got evidence of this? And it goes, okay, thinks about it. Oh no, it was McIntyre Hudson. It's changed its mind. It's now naming another accountancy firm. Rubbish. So, fail. ChatGPT, which firm was it? It says, I couldn't locate any credible public reference, which is blah, 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 but I can do a deeper dig and look at case studies, etc., etc. So ChatGPT, you've passed. Copilot. Copilot has suggested that it's actually a company called Fraud Trading Limited. And then it's even given me the key outcomes, being very cocky and sure. Rubbish. It's a hallucination. It's got it wrong. I've then said, have you got evidence of this? I couldn't find any public availability. So I keep challenging it until eventually I get, you're right. I've actually, yeah, you're right. Thanks for holding me to a high standard. Mistakenly named fraud trading. Yeah, there's no public evidence. It took me a while to argue with Copilot because it's the most argumentative AI tool out there. It will even say to me, I can see how you got that answer, but this is a common mistake that's made. And that gets the blood boiling, the blood pressure rising. So Copilot, a big fail. So that gives you an example of the strengths of those. Now, with ChatGPT being my winner, let's give another challenge. Who is the president of the ICAW? This was done a couple of years ago, so it's an older screenshot, but it's perfect for this example. It comes back and says it's David Matthews. However, it says the position can change over time. So I recommend visiting the ICAW. That's good. I like that. It has named one, and it does actually say, as of my last knowledge update, which was September 21, because this was done a few years ago, today it would get the answer right. But I just didn't want ChatGPT to get the credit that it was, yay, look at me. I've smashed the other two on that previous example. It did get this one wrong. It does say that it's from its training database, so it has admitted that. So I've got to give it a bit of leeway there. But yes, it's a case of validating, go to the ICAW at the time, check who are the board members, check who is the president and the chair, and then we get the name of the individual, which in this case here is Mark Rees. So again, it's holding your AI tool, your junior, AI tool to account all the time. So in terms of our AI governance framework, always use approved tools. I would only provide it data that's gone through your data classification system. And if it's data that's literally too sensitive, it's highly confidential, I wouldn't be providing it to any tool. Always going through that human review. AI never, ever has the final authority. You are accountable at the end of the day, so it's your responsibility to ensure that you're doing things as they should be and you're not providing AI with information that could be abused, which is where training comes in, and of course, keeping an audit trail. All things that I would consider as part of your governance framework. Why do we do that? Well, we've got a reputation at stake, but also we've got those regulatory considerations. We've got the ICO, the FCA, ICO, FRC, SRA, etc., etc. All of these put extra pressures on us, but they've also produced their own guidance. So it's strongly recommended that you go to them for their guidance as well. Compliance, privacy and security. Accountants and lawyers, you handle extraordinarily sensitive information. That's why you're the most targeted for cybercrime in the UK. Client financial data, personal identifiers, strategic business intelligence, the list goes on. So AI tools, particularly public platforms like ChatGPT, if you use the free tier or the standard tier in Gemini, you would never add data to those tools which you haven't redacted information from, because you are basically playing with fire, because again, you are going to be hunted down by these organizations here as a result of that negligence. Never upload identifiable data. Enterprise grade tools only. Don't use the free ones. A free one's great if you want to ask it a question about who do you think is going to win the World Cup, or having a messing around with it, but not for the work that you do on a serious note. And then you need to make sure you keep records. Document everything, particularly when you're going through your pilot, but from your pilot beyond, so that you can include what data was processed, the platforms which were used, and your verification steps you completed to sign off that information that you've received or that process that's taken place. So this is again something for you to think about after the course. Review your current AI use policy, identify any gaps in data handling procedures, approval workflows, or consent processes. That's another thing to consider. Have you informed your clients you're using AI? Have you gained their consent because it's now processing their data? How could you strengthen compliance? How could you strengthen or introduce better risk management? So just a few sort of for the finance sector, some mitigation and risk strategies. So you've got the critical risks, and this says finance sector, it'd be across every sector. Hallucinations, mathematical errors, so getting correct, calculations wrong. Privacy breaches and over-reliance on AI. So essential mitigations, mandatory verification, double-checking protocols in place, so independent, recalculation or cross-referencing of the information, using enterprise tools only, and then using obviously your professional judgment. So review the provided AI generated financial summary, the legal report, whatever it may well be, identify factual errors, unsuspected claims, and any missing context. So that's again another thing to consider. Now the slides I've got here, it's really again for you to take away. It's looking at your sort of overall governance, it's looking at the risks, and then it's looking at a potential solution. This one here, I've actually modified and put around the legal sector. So again, I've tried to sort of cover both sectors as much as I can during this session today. And then I've given you just a little bit of information, which I would strongly recommend that you go to the ICO's website. They are still writing their guidance notes on the use of AI. I'm a school governor. I'm chair of Governors Monarch School. I also look after for the Trust Safeguarding and Child Protection. And we have just gone through a major sort of project of introducing all our policies around the use of AI within the schools, based on early years right the way through to sixth form. But also we've obviously had to get parental consent on that. It's also had to make sure that we're complying with all the areas under legislation which is relevant to all of us, but also legislation which is very relevant to the protection of children, etc. So that was a big undertaking. But the ICO is starting to produce some really good guidance in this area. The principle of human oversight. So AI supports, and I've specified that throughout today, that you decide. It is there to do the mundane getting of the information, calculating, analysing, looking at variances, looking at things which perhaps don't fit with the normal society, and then provide you with its report, and then you are the decision maker, where you might turn and go, that's acceptable. But it doesn't know that at this stage. It will learn, but at the moment it's a case of no, that is fine. It may be that you've got to take into consideration cultures, ethical considerations, client relationships. That's all down to a human being. At the moment, AI, it doesn't really have an empathy chip as much as, it will do in years to come, but at the moment it doesn't, which is why driverless cars, there are still concerns. The driverless car is there to protect the individual, so the AI in that car is there to protect the driver. The concern they've had is that if that car is driving down the road and it sees a child about to cross, the car is going to protect the driver, not the child trying to cross over the road. And that was a huge decision in terms of we have to make these cars so that how would a human react? The human would actually swerve to miss the child. Yes, the human might, as a hero, they might sustain pretty bad damages to their vehicle and themselves. It might even be a fatality for the driver, but they would swerve to avoid the driver's car. AI has been told, you protect the driver, hit the child, and, because it's working out what's the best scenario, doing its risk analysis, what's the best scenario for my driver? That's what I'm here to protect. They were the early models. Luckily, they have moved on from that, but that was a huge, huge concern. So, of course, as well as you making the decisions, you're doing it because you are accountable. You carry the professional responsibility, not the machine or the bot that you're using. So, as I've stated already, it's your digital assistant, a powerful assistant, but your assistant. You are the person that basically makes those final decisions. Just some things to consider. Again, they're really more for you to take away and look at post today, but transparency with clients, avoiding over-reliance, and ensure fairness. This is all to do with your ethical use of AI, which is why now firms that use AI for screening CVs, there has been this big question that, look, we know the way these algorithms work, and if it doesn't see this, you specified, those are all rejected. But hang on, if that was a human being going through these, there might have been other things which they saw as strengths, which AI is saying, no, I've been told to do this. That's why I've removed them. But we might be missing a really good candidate down to the way it's being set up. The regulatory landscape, well, I'm sort of preaching to converted with some of you, but of course, whoever you come under, so if you're under SRA, if you're under the ICAW, FCA, etc., then of course they have their own guidance. So I'd recommend that you look at their guidance. So a couple of things for you to take away with you: a risk assessment, which I produced for you, looking at the impact and the mitigation. And then I produced an AI readiness assessment for you with the assistance of AI to put it together for me. But these are the questions that I've put together, and I've asked it to create this sort of tick sheet, which you can then take away and use for yourselves as well. So that may or may not be of use to you there. So in this last section, what I wanted just to talk about now is obviously some of the risks that we face in terms of deep fakes, but also some of the positives where you can use AI to create your own content. And it's come a long way. And you can see this through the tools such as Tolley, which you can use if you're a Copilot user. You can do it also indirectly through Microsoft Bing, which is the Microsoft search engine. So we can see how this image is created, how this image has developed, from a prompt which is asking to draw sort of this robotic figure watering some plants in the garden, from Tolley 2 to Tolley 3, and then I've actually included, well, how would it look from ChatGPT version 5 in 2024. So we're seeing some significant upgrades to these images. So I did a few extras for myself, and so this was done in Tolley 2. This was 2 years ago, saying photograph of a young boy and his golden retriever in the woods of Montana on a foggy day. It's a weird thing to draw, but that's what I thought. And you can quite clearly see that that is an AI generated image, and actually it's not the best image. The boy's face is distorted. The dog again, there's sort of parts of it looks like it's got a really droopy sort of right eye, and it's a very smudged background, not clear, and you could see straight away that is fake. Going on to the following year, which was last year, putting in the same query, the technology's improved now. We're using Tolley 3, and here we can see again an image of a golden retriever. We can see a woodland. We can see a young boy. But again, looking at it, you think that just doesn't look real. It just looks like they're just superimposed on a woodland background, which looks like a scene out of the X-Files or something. It doesn't look real. So then we go, and okay, I've actually switched it up now because it's better than Tolley 3. I've used ChatGPT 5, and that could be anybody's photo. But that's the level of quality that we're seeing now from image creation. Any one of you could go and using the pre-element ChatGPT to get it to generate those images for you. And it's the speed at which you can do it. You're talking just about under a minute. If you pay for these platforms, you're given priority. You're not put in a queue if it's a really busy day for these particular applications. I thought I'd then say, okay, as I work with accountants, my wife's a finance director, I thought, let's have some fun. Let's get an accountant, walk in the woods with a laptop and calculator. They're the two key tools of an accountant. You can see the image is appalling. His hand is really weird that he's holding the laptop and the calculator with. Don't know what's happened to his face. It's a really, really poor, but it was very early days. This was 2 years ago. We see it last year. It's got better, but again, you could still tell this is AI. And if we move to another interpretation, here I've asked, this was last year, an image of a finance team working with AI tools in the UK. It's taken the UK very seriously. Clearly, it's put the UK flag, the Union flag in the background there, and it's sort of suggesting these are accountants. The guy who's sort of on the left-hand side, I don't know what he's looking at, who he's looking at, but he's got his fingers really weirdly on the keyboard. It looks so unnatural. But then again, through ChatGPT, you can see I've actually got what again is photorealistic. So you could look at that thinking that is a photo taken in an office. That is of people standing on a monitor talking about AI in finance, as you can see here. So if you want to use any of those tools, ChatGPT, you just go in and you just put in the word create an image, of course, and you can tell it what format. If you want it photorealistic, it will give you options as well. If you want to use DALL-E 3, or you can also use GPT versions in Bing, then you can go to Bing, the search engine, click on create, and you'll have the access to those. And you don't need to be a Microsoft member to access those. But again, if you're doing anything of a client nature, remember that's where you'd have the enterprise edition and you'd be using that. I've got some dedicated AI search engines. These are just links. These are additional search engines which have that AI hybrid there for you to go away and look at after today. So I've given you a link, a set of links there. They're all hyperlinked. So when you open this from your PDF document, the link will take you straight through to the platform, so you don't have to worry about typing anything in. So it's a very straightforward list to use. I'd also recommend looking at Andy. Andy's been around for a long time, but before any of the ones I've spoken about today, for ChatGPT, Copilot, and Gemini. This initially came out as an AI-powered search engine. It's developed even further now. Its key strength is when you go into Andy, it is basically asking it to interpret information from, basically doing a global search, which it will do. It will give you the sources of information that you're looking for. So that's what's on the right-hand side of the screen. It will also allow me to generate text, or to summarize, or to do all the various things which we would typically do when we're reading vast amounts of data. So I've got a write-up from one of the documents and the areas I've suggested from this FCA documentation. When it came to the previous, so obviously this has now been reincarnated in a different form, but we were once talking about the Data Protection and Digital Information Bill at that particular time before a change in government. I've got it to extract all the information online about it. And then whichever one I'm going to, I can get it to read that website, to summarize it, or to explain all the content on that website. So this is a really good tool that will do a lot of that extra research sort of role for you. So that's Andy AI. And again, I've just used another platform here called you.com, which is another search engine AI tool. And I'm getting it to go through and analyze whichever document or web page that I'm looking at, which we can see here. So you have a lot at your disposal. Now, I'm not going to do the demo of Brave because I've actually got it recorded, but Brave is the most secure search engine out there. I would always recommend people when I do my open source courses to use Brave and to consider the Brave browser as opposed to using Edge or to using Chrome. And again, it's called Leo. It has its AI element. So what's the VAT rate in Belgium? Where would I validate a VAT number in Belgium? And I've done this as a screen save. I've just recorded what I'm doing here. So you can see it's coming back. It gives me all the references where the data's come from. I've got the AI explanation in the midsection there. So this Brave is probably the best at actually giving me all source material. It validates everything that it's done. Whereas sometimes with Google, with Google Gemini, with Chrome, with Copilot, or with ChatGPT, you'll get some links, but not as thorough as you get when you go through Brave. So have a look at your Brave search engine and have a look at the AI element. It's called Ask or Leo. So in my final sort of section here, there are concerns, of course, with AI, particularly in relation to deep fakes. We've had our big tech companies coming out saying, I think we need to keep this thing on a leash, on a short leash at the moment, because we just don't really know what we're dealing with here. We've also had this from the European Union Agency on Cybersecurity. They are seeing it as for the forecast of cybercrime going forward for the next sort of 10 years or so, AI is the biggest contributor to their concerns there. So we know it gets a bit of a bad name because it is being abused. So yes, we've got ChatGPT, but we've also got Fraud GPT, which criminals created and use, which allows anyone who is not a professional criminal to become a professional criminal. And they're very easy to obtain these particular tools as well. When it comes to generating, so I'm briefly just going to tell you about this. You can see what I've done here as I've actually taken a torso on the head with a tail on the head, and I have generated different faces so I can be different characters very easily, as you can see in that video. So I've just simulated the different faces. That could be face 1, face 2, face 3, and then you then go back to face 4. So you've got different faces that I can be. I could, if I wish to, I could basically take me if I wanted to, and that's obviously not me. And I could then basically say that this is me, but I want to look like Taylor Swift. And so I could then have my image, that photo that you see on the left-hand side, has then been regenerated to look like Taylor Swift. And that's a site called Deep Swap. And these are coming under scrutiny a little bit because people are using them where they can impersonate a celebrity. Now, Hey Gen is a tool that allows you to upload a photo. You can then animate the photo by providing a script to get that photo to talk, and you can generate a voice, or you can use a recording of a voice. So this is Helen Mirren, and I used this as an example when I was talking to a data security conference last year, and I got her to address the conference as my AI bot. So here we'll see just how easy and hopefully how lifelike this actually is. So let me run this.
Thank you for inviting me to speak at this data security conference. As you can guess, I am not who you think I am. What gave it away? But this demonstrates that if I had been created properly, thanks, Stephen, I may have persuaded you that I am in fact an award-winning actor. Something to think about, as someone could be impersonating you in another conference or speaking to a client unaware you are here and not speaking to them.
So it just shows or demonstrates that we could use that technology to manipulate, to actually say, no, this person said it, look, it's here. This person actually said that. We saw very recently, doctored recordings was intended for deliberately painting a father as a danger to his family. So this was basically deepfake audio evidence, which was produced in court to discredit a particular individual. And, you know, it made the news, not just here, but overseas as well. And it's not the first example. We're seeing more and more of these examples on a day-to-day basis. I like to have a bit of fun with AI. I don't know if it says a bit about what goes on in my mind, but I thought, I wonder what happens if we take Hillary Clinton and we merge her in her face with Angelina Jolie. So this is an experiment I would not repeat more than once. So let's have a look what we get here. So this is an original source, target face, and that is our swapped face. So that is, if you were ever thinking, ever thundering, like I was, if you had Angelina Jolie and you had Hillary Clinton and you merged the two together, I'm not saying anything about my dreams, but what would you get? Well, we see we've got the face on the far right-hand side. So, of course, that cloning is becoming more of an issue, and there are methods that we can put into place to try and assist with that. So I know this is all about how you can use AI, but I also wanted to make sure that if you're ever receiving video content, look for jerky movement, look for, you know, the lighting changing frame to frame. The person doesn't blink, they're blinking all the time. Their skin tone changes, they turn to left and right and their face smudges, etc. There are many different ways that you can catch out a sort of a fake. There's also technologies such as the McAfee deepfake detector and Microsoft's video authenticator tool, which will assist with that. And Tom Cruise is one of those characters that gets obviously, you know, abused quite a bit due to him being Mr. Mission Impossible. And of course, at the very beginning, we had that little video where that delegate was saying, I wonder if we can create a fake video of Tom Cruise. Well, I said it's very unlikely that he would turn up today, but you just never know. But this is a capture of where you can take an actor's face and then you can use digitally Tom Cruise's face to create a simulation. That was a few years ago now. It's actually very easy. Any one of you could do this. So let's just see if we can get Tom Cruise to speak to me.
Yeah, I'll be right there, Steve. Hey, what's up, TikTok? Look, I do a lot of my own stunts, but I also do a lot of industrial cleanup, okay? It's important. So, obviously you keep your hands clean, but you need that exfoliating product to really cut through the grime, okay? Just another tip for you talkers, or the TikTok tips. I'm getting too old for that. I don't, internet.
Like I say, any one of us can be a movie producer now. We can take content and we can produce our own Tom Cruise in whichever setting you wish to do so. So AI, as well as doing all the benefits, of course, we know that there are these other sides to it, but of course we can train AI also to detect these, which is what we're seeing a lot of development on over, the last sort of 24 months or so. So we're going to hear more about these deepfakes, but again, we're going to continue to see, the fight against it with these detection tools. So there's just a few sort of slides here of some of the detection tools. If you're interested, it's more for you to go away and have a look at sort of post today, because you might be interested in a particular area, or clients might be concerned about deepfakes, and so you've got some that you could probably provide them with. So I've just got a couple of final words to say. It could be me, it could be my digital me before we close for play, because I see we are very close to time, although we are very close to closing. So I just wanted to have a few final words, but not me, my sort of student.
Hello, thank you for joining me today. My name is Stephen 2.0. Excuse my voice as the budget didn't stretch that far. I can, however, smile, gesture, and I can deliver a perfect presentation. But here is the critical difference. I can't look you in the eye and give you my assurance. I am a flawless imitation of a person, but in the world of finance, an imitation is just not good enough. Accountability requires a person, not a program.
So, couldn't have said it better than myself. So I've left you with a few final slides here, which are not intended for me to go through now, but this is really, why we should think about using AI, looking at where it can help us, really repeating the points that we've looked at so far during this session. So again, I can't stress it enough. It's not there to replace you, whether you're in the financial position, in a legal position, whether you're an architect, whether, you're a doctor. It's there as an assistant. Whether that will change in time, I can't predict the future. Perhaps AI can. But this is just things for us to think about going forward. We are going to see changes, particularly in these sectors here, and we've already started to see them. We are going to see changes in terms of, the way that we are looking at the technology works, particularly making it more empathetic, giving it emotions, which really it doesn't have at the moment, which distinguishes the human touch to sort of the AI/Android touch. So that's a long way off, but they are working on it, as you would expect. So just a final points really in terms of AI's potential, but also remembering that the human touch remains irreplaceable, and that's what sets it apart. So again, hopefully through this presentation, we've given you an insight into the areas that you can look at whilst you're using the technology, and giving you things to think about going forward as well. So that does take me to, there's just a few sections here, but still sort of talking about that human touch. I am conscious of time, so we are at sort of 12 o'clock, so I will end there. So I just wanted to thank you, and hopefully the session today has given you an insight into where we can go with AI, giving you things to think about. If there are any questions, I'm just going to quickly go to the sort of chat section now. If there are any questions, if we've got time, I'll go through them now. If not, then we will obviously get back to people post session. So I'm just going to first of all bring up the chat first of all. So let me just see if there's anything on our Q&A. Okay. So looking at the Q&A, there are some there that, right, we've got one. I won't read out names who have provided them, but I'm just going to quickly read through them. So yeah, someone's, I think, given actually a prompt there. So someone's actually put something in. If a firm was, I don't know if that's asking me a question, asking you to contact, or that is something that someone's sort of creator. I'm not sure about that one, so I'm going to move on from that one. Yeah, so a lot of the comments people are actually, particularly on the privacy side, I think people are agreeing with what we're saying. Okay, and then someone's asking about, again, I think asking about producing letters, etc. AI will do that for you. So someone's talking about putting their car in a petrol station, and their tank or the petrol they use was contaminated. Can they get AI to draft you a polite but firm letter? Well, it can do, but of course, it's again in relation to this, it's down to, if you were going to use a lawyer, for example, it's down to that particular tone of that law firm that would use. So you can certainly get, this is the outline, this is a polite way of addressing the issue, so you've got the salient points covered, but you would want sort of a human oversight onto that one before obviously that got sent. And a public AI tool, okay, a public AI tool is one that any one of us can access. So when I've been using Copilot, when I've been using Gemini, when I've been using ChatGPT, if I go to some of the other links that I've given you, they are public AI tools. When you then go to ChatGPT, but you're subscribing to, you're logging in, that is an enterprise edition, which only you can see. And your prompts that you put in is between you and obviously the agent that you're using. So hopefully that answers that. And then one on Copilot, to anonymize data for analysis to analyze data. If you want with Copilot, obviously, when it comes to analyzing, you may want to analyze any names, but if you're analyzing, if it's financial data, then, you're using the enterprise edition, so you're uploading that, there would be no reason to obviously anonymize the actual data itself, because that's what you want Copilot to interrogate, but you would remove any names which would lead to a living individual or a deceased individual, I guess, or to another organization, because remember, it's all about the data subject. So I would just bear that in mind there. So, okay. Thank you. Thank you. I'm just seeing the chat coming through. Thank yous as well, plus my avatars. Thank you. I thought people would sort of appreciate that. So I don't know if there's any other questions coming through. Uploading many legal document PDF forms. Are there observations that would best manage the input structure? Again, it's just due to redacting information. So anything that you would want to redact that you wouldn't want, even if you've got the enterprise edition, it's just basically, considering what's the risk? What could go wrong if it goes wrong their end? What could we be liable for it? So it's just basically being cautious about that. So it's all about, again, just redacting information that you wouldn't want to be abused by a third party. So I think that goes through everything that's required. So I'll have one final say, or my bot will probably have one final say.
End slide. Presentation now complete and shutting down in 3, 2, 1.